Chapter 25. Outside the Jun family's mountain gate in the Emperor State. Countless birds and beasts covered the sky and covered the earth, pulling all kinds of gorgeous carriages. There were huge ships crossing the void. At this moment, the Jun family's mountain gate was wide open, welcoming guests from all over. As for the possibility of someone causing trouble, the array that was faintly flickering in the void exuded an aura that even saints would be wary of. It was enough to intimidate those with impure thoughts. No one or force dared to cause trouble at the Jun family's banquet. The Daoji heavenly sect is here. They present the Son of God with 9 Daoist scrolls. It's the Daoji heavenly sect. The old Daoist from the Daoji heavenly sect is quite famous. Some people from other forces discussed. The Holy Land of Dian is here. They present the Son of God with a bottle of divine condensation chalcedony and 100 supreme-grade divine sources. Oh my God, the Holy Land of Dian even took out the divine condensation chalcedony. That's a miraculous item that can nourish the true spirit in the divine palace. Many people were jealous when they heard that. Every one of those gifts was enough to make people scramble for them. Now, all of them were presented to the Son of God of the Jun family as congratulatory gifts. People couldn't help but be jealous. The Great Shang dynasty is here. They present the most precious treasure, a painting of mountains and rivers. Following the shout, a beautiful and alluring woman came over with a painting of mountains and rivers. She had a sweet smile on her face and her beautiful eyes were filled with longing. It's the princess of the Great Shang dynasty. What a beauty! Sigh, we can only look at such a beauty from afar, but she wants to chase after the Son of God of the Jun family. Comparisons are odious. Many male geniuses from other forces sighed in their hearts. They were not qualified to pursue the princess of the Great Shang dynasty, but the princess only wanted to be liked by the Son of God. Next, many forces came in an endless stream to present congratulatory gifts. There was the Snow Wind Empire in the far north, and the Tianya Temple in the far south. It could be said that as long as the forces received the sword message, none of them dared to not come. These forces were all first-rate forces and above, and they were qualified to enter the Jun family's mountain gate. Those second-rate forces that were not even first-rate could only send gifts and wait at the banquet outside the mountain gate. These forces weren't dissatisfied. After all, they didn't have the right to do so. The clan of the ancients, the Jiang clan, has arrived. They've delivered an ancient saint weapon, 3 immortal herbs, 100 top-notch sage pills, and 1,000 peerless celestial sources, the disciple of the Jun family continued to recite. This extravagance also shocked the many factions present. Isn't this gift a little too generous? Have you forgotten? The Jiang family and the Jun family have been connected by marriage for generations. That Son of God of the Jun family's mother is a member of the Jiang family. How can there not be many congratulatory gifts from his mother's family? The Jiang family was considered the immortal power that had the best relationship with the Jun family. The two families had been connected by marriage for generations, and they were almost wearing the same pants. 2 beautiful silhouettes stepped directly into the Jun family's mountain gate. All the guests present looked over, and their faces could not help but be stunned. They were a little dazed. These 2 beauties, one big and one small. Her snow-white robe was flawless, and she looked like a celestial being. Her facial features were exquisite, and she looked like a fairy descending to the mortal world. The younger one was delicate and dainty. Her eyes were quick-witted and lively. Her temperament was like that of a beautiful fairy. These 2 women had different styles, but they were both so beautiful that even heaven and earth were overshadowed by them. The 2 of them are so beautiful. The big beauty must be Jiang Shengyi, the goddess of the Jiang family, who has a natural Taoist embryo. The small one must be the pearl of the Jiang family, Jiang Luoli, who has the Yuan spirit body. Looking at the 2 beauties, the men present couldn't take their eyes off them. Almost at the same time, another voice was heard. The clan of the ancients, the Yi family, has arrived. They've delivered 10 top-notch sage pills, 100 divine sources, and 3 noble weapons. Hearing this voice, many people whispered to themselves. The clan of the ancients, the Yi family, was also quite famous. However, their gifts were ordinary. Not to mention the Jiang family, even the gifts given by the clan of the ancients were shabby. However, the relationship between the Yi family and the Jun family was just so. It was natural for them to send such gifts. Haha, Miss Luo Li, please wait. Two figures walked into the gate of the Jun family. One of them was an old servant with a goatee, and the other was a young man in a blue shirt. It was Yi Xingyun. It's the top genius of the Yi family, Yi Xingyun, who has the kingly body of stars. And you are? Jiang Luoli turned around and looked at Yi Xingyun in confusion. The smile on Yi Xingyun's face froze. He was a little embarrassed. Then, he said, Miss Luo Li, you forgot that in the secret realm of Luo Yu, Jiang Luoli finally remembered. She said calmly, oh, you're that, who are you? I'm Yi Xingyun of the Yi family. Yi Xingyun felt even more embarrassed. Could it be that Jiang Luoli didn't remember him at all? Oh, it's you. Sorry, I usually don't remember people with average looks, Jiang Luoli said, curling her lips. As soon as she said that, the whole place fell silent. Yi Xingyun was even more embarrassed. To be honest, Yi Xingyun was not bad looking. He had sharp eyebrows and bright eyes. He was very delicate and pretty. Most girls would feel comfortable looking at him. However, in Jiang Luoli's words, he was just average looking. However, Yi Xingyun was thick-skinned. He forced a smile and said, Miss Luo Li, long time no see. Would you like to sit with me later? Hearing this, some of the people present understood what was going on. It turned out that Yi Xingyun had an ulterior motive. He was not here to attend the banquet. He was here to flirt. At the side, Jiang Xingyi frowned slightly. Jiang Ru had always wanted to matchmake Jiang Luoli and Jun Xiaoyao. Was Yi Xingyun trying to steal her away? Luo Li, let's go find cousin Jiang Luoli. Jiang Xingyi took Jiang Luoli's hand and said, okay. Jiang Luoli nodded slightly and stopped paying attention to Yi Xingyun. Yi Xingyun took a deep breath. He still had a calm smile on his face. It's okay. I still have a chance. Yi Xingyun comforted himself. On the other side, the door to a magnificent hall in the Jun residence opened. Only the most distinguished guests and people from the top orthodoxies were allowed to enter. The rest of the top forces were seated on other divine islands. The Jiang family, the Yi family, and some other clan of the ancients, supreme clans, and top dynasties were also seated. All kinds of fine wine and delicacies were served on jade plates. The dishes were gorgeous and sumptuous. They were all rare treasures. Are the big shots of the Jun family not here yet? Where is the Son of God? An elder from a top orthodoxy looked around. Just then, a man and a woman with powerful auras appeared. One of them was a young man in a black robe. His aura was as sharp as a sword. He was Jun Zhangjian, sequence 10 of the Jun family. He had come out of seclusion to attend Jun Xiaoyao's 10-years-old banquet. The woman beside him was wearing a light blue tassel dress. She seemed to be surrounded by a cold aura. Her eyes were ice blue. Her hair was tied up with an ice blue phoenix hairpin. Her skin was as white as snow. She looked like a beauty carved out of ice. That's Jun Xue Huang, sequence 7 of the Jun family. She has the ice spirit body. It's said that she can freeze thousands of miles of land and make it snow with a single thought. Many people looked at Jun Xue Huang. The sequence 10 of the Jun family were all extraordinary. Among them, there was no lack of outstanding women. Jun Xue Huang was such an existence. I didn't expect you to come out of seclusion to attend Xiaoyao's 10-years-old banquet. Jun Zhangjian smiled faintly. The sequence 10 of the Jun family were either in seclusion or traveling the world to explore the secret realms. Only a few people came to attend Jun Xiaoyao's 10-years-old banquet. Jun Xue Huang pursed her lips and said faintly, I just want to see how powerful the Son of God, who defeated you at the age of 3, is. Hearing this, Jun Zhangjian's face immediately became unnatural. This was simply touching the pot that didn't boil. At that moment, another figure walked into the hall. It's him. Chapter 26. The only person who could make the two sequences of the Jun family look so serious was someone even more powerful. The person who walked into the hall was a young man in silver armor. He had a square face and a cold and arrogant temperament. The crisscrossing scars on his cheeks added to his cold temperament. The young man's eyes were like two thunder lakes. When he opened and closed them, lightning shot out, and the profound meaning of thunder and lightning manifested around him. It's him. I didn't expect him to be here too. Seeing the young man, many geniuses from the major forces looked serious. Even Yi Xingyun looked serious. He's here too. His Zhun Wanjie, the fifth sequence of the Zhun family. Zhun Wanjie was definitely a legendary genius. He was born in a collateral branch of the Zhun family. His status was not high, and he had suffered a lot. These collateral members of the Zhun family were usually sent to various states to manage the Zhun family's businesses after they reached adulthood. Zhun Wanjie was one of them. That was until he accidentally obtained a supreme technique, the heavenly skill of surviving calamities. Because of that, Zhun Wanjie awakened a top-level constitution that he had never known before, the Thunder Calamity Battle Constitution. The Thunder Calamity Battle Constitution was ranked in the top 300 among the 3,000 constitutions. It was one of the top-level constitutions and had extremely strong combat power. Because of that, Zhun Wanjie became the fifth sequence of the Zhun family. Although the 10 sequences of the Zhun family were all outstanding talents, there was still a certain gap in strength between them. The fact that Zhun Wanjie could be ranked in the top 5 of the 10 sequences was enough to prove his strength. However, his arrival made Zhun Zhanjian and Zhun Shuahuang frown. The reason was simple. Perhaps it was because Zhun Wanjie was born in a collateral branch and had been treated coldly since he was a child. He was very arrogant and domineering. He did not have a good relationship with the other sequences. With his personality, it's really strange that he would attend Xiaoyao's 10-years-old banquet, Zhun Zhanjian murmured. Obviously, he didn't like Zhun Wanjie either. Perhaps he wants to witness the strength of the Son of God. After all, in the future, the Son of God is likely to become one of the top 10 sequences, Zhun Shuahuang guessed. Until now, they still did not know that Zhun Xiaoyao had already been internally selected as Sequence 0. After Zhun Wanjie arrived, he immediately chose a seat and sat down alone. No one else dared to approach him. With the arrival of the 3 sequences of the Zhun family, the atmosphere in the hall became even more heated. At this moment, several powerful auras arrived. Many people from the various forces and orthodoxies were startled as they looked over. A group of elders of the Zhun family had arrived. Every one of them had an imposing aura that made people feel intimidated at first glance. Zhun Xiaoyao's mother, Jiang Ru, had also arrived. Everyone, thank you for attending my grandson's 10-years-old banquet. This old man would like to express his gratitude. The golden-robed elder in the middle was none other than Zhun Zhantian. You're welcome. It's our honor to be able to catch a glimpse of the true face of the Son of God. Everyone present smiled and returned the salute. An elder from an orthodoxy hesitated and said, "May I know where Lord Son of God is now?" As soon as he said that, many people's ears perked up. The banquet had already begun, but the main character had yet to appear. This was somewhat inappropriate. Moreover, these people were mostly here to catch a glimpse of the true face of the Zhun family's Son of God. I'm sorry, everyone. My grandson has been in seclusion and has yet to come out. However, he should be out soon, just as Zhun Zhantian finished speaking. Suddenly, a rumbling sound was heard from the heavenly Emperor Palace deep within the Zhun family's residence. Above the 9 heavens, thunder surged and rays of light shone brightly. What kind of scene is that? It seems like someone is breaking through to the next level. Is it the Son of God? But isn't the aura of a breakthrough a little too terrifying? Many powerhouses in the main hall were stunned when they sensed the fluctuation of the aura. They took a deep breath. The divine child of the Zhun family was only 10 years old at the very most. Boom! In the distance, the heavenly Emperor Palace shone with a bright golden light. Vaguely, the shadow of an immemorial divine elephant appeared, suppressing the 9 heavens and 10 earth. What kind of cultivation method is that? It makes me feel a little scared. Yi Xingyun's expression changed slightly when he sensed the pressure of the immemorial divine elephant. He was one of the more arrogant ones. With his kingly body of stars, He was extraordinarily talented and could easily dominate the world. However, the primordial divine elephant made even Yi Xingyun shudder in fear. This made Yi Xingyun frown. He did not like this feeling. While the guests were still in shock, a giant hand appeared in the distance and pressed down from the sky, isolating all the strange phenomena so that no one could see what was going on. That hand, could it be a supreme being? Seeing the giant hand that wiped away the strange phenomena, all the powerhouses in the hall secretly swallowed their saliva and trembled with fear. There was no doubt that the person who made the move was a supreme being. Could it be the 18th ancestor of the Jun family? Some people guessed, while the various powers were making all sorts of guesses due to the abnormal phenomenon. The gate of the Heavenly Emperor Palace was finally opened. In the midst of the dazzling light, a peerless figure in a white robe slowly appeared. At this moment, countless pairs of eyes fell on the figure who stepped out of the Heavenly Emperor Palace. It was a tall young man. His body was shrouded in a hazy divine halo. His white robe was whiter than snow, making him look like a banished immortal. His hair was sparkling and translucent, and his body seemed to be the best immortal jade. It contained divine light. His face was shrouded in a hazy divine halo, but it could still be vaguely seen. His facial features were naturally exquisite, so handsome that it gave people a kind of unreal feeling. At first glance, people would be puzzled. Was he human? Or was he an immortal who was accidentally banished to the mortal world? At this moment, the world was silent. Many women even seemed to have stopped breathing. Even some of the girls of the Jun family who had seen Jun Xiaoyaro before felt suffocated at this moment. After a year of closed-door cultivation, Jun Xiaoyao's temperament had sublimated and become more profound. A stranger like Jade, the son of God, is unparalleled. A girl of the Jun family murmured these words as if she had lost her mind. At this moment, Jun Xiaoyaro looked at the gazes all over the sky and was slightly surprised. Is it time for my 10-years-old banquet? Jun Xiaoyaro did not expect that he would be in closed-door cultivation for a year in the blink of an eye. Now, his strength had sublimated again and reached the peak of the true spirit level 9. This far exceeded his goal of breaking through to the true spirit level, which was considered to be an overachievement. It could be said that in the entire Huangtian mystic realm, there were few who could reach the true spirit level 9 before the age of 10. Lord Son of God, the banquet has begun. Seeing that Jun Xiaoyaro had come out of closed-door cultivation, Jun Linglong, who had been waiting outside the palace, came up and said. As for Bai Yu, she had returned to the ancient kingdom of Phoenix. Well, let's go to the main hall first. Jun Xiaoyaro nodded slightly and stepped into the air like a deity. It was not until Jun Xiaoyao's figure was far away that those who had been paying attention came back to their senses. I don't know how strong the son of God of the Jun family is, but when it comes to appearance and temperament, he is the best in the mystic realm. A maiden of a major force who came to the banquet mumbled to herself. At this moment, in the main hall, many people knew that the son of God of the Jun family had come out of closed-door cultivation. In just a moment, a calm and gentle voice was heard from the entrance of the hall. Thank you all for coming to attend my banquet. As soon as the voice was heard, an otherworldly figure dressed in snow-white clothes walked into the hall leisurely. Chapter 27. Everyone present was mesmerized by Jun Xiaoyao's appearance and temperament. All the women's beautiful eyes were infatuated. It was as if their souls were captivated by the handsome young man in front of them. Jun Xiaoyaro was like an immortal descending to the mortal world. His temperament was too otherworldly. Is this the son of God of the Jun family? Seeing him in person is better than hearing about him 100 times. He's really a god. Everyone sighed in their hearts. In the midst of this silence, a delicate voice suddenly rang out. Wow, 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 are you the son of God of the Jun family, Jun Xiaoyaro? A beautiful young girl cried out loudly. Her beautiful eyes were sparkling, and sparkling saliva was dripping from the corner of her tender red mouth. Yes, you are? Jun Xiaoyaro raised his eyebrows and looked at the beautiful young girl. His first impression was, short. That's right. Jiang Luoli had bright eyes and white teeth. She was delicate and charming, and when she smiled, 2 dimples would appear on her jade cheeks. However, her figure was quite petite. She looked to be about 1.5 meters tall. I'm Jiang Luoli. Jiang Luoli's beautiful face was slightly red. Lowly Jiang? Jun Xiaoyaro tilted his head slightly. No. It's Jiang Luoli. No, it's Jiang Luoli. Jiang Luoli's face was red and her heart was beating fast. She was a little incoherent. Jun Xiaoyaro suddenly understood. So she was a member of his mother's family. Thinking of this, Jun Xiaoyaro smiled at Jiang Luoli and said, "Thank you, Miss Jiang, for giving me the honor of coming to this banquet." Fart. Seeing Jun Xiaoyao's handsome face shrouded in celestial light and faintly smiling, Jiang Luoli's whole body went numb. She had the illusion that her heart was shot by Cupid's arrow. For someone like her who was obsessed with looks, Jun Xiaoyao's appearance had simply stimulated her. He was truly a celestial being. Jiang Shengyi, on the other hand, was slightly shaken when she saw her nephew who was so handsome that he didn't look human. She originally wanted to tease Jiang Luoli, but now, she was a little stunned. The moment Jiang Shengyi saw Jun Xiaoyao, an indescribable emotion welled up in his heart. Her innate Taoist fetus physique seemed to be touched. What's going on? Jiang Shengyi was shocked. She touched her slightly red face. Xiaoyao, come here quickly. This is mother's distant cousin, your aunt, Jiang Shengyi. There's also Luo Li. She's the apple of my Jiang family's eye. It's just nice to get to know her. Jiang Ru smiled and greeted Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Xiaoyao was speechless. It turned out that the short little girl was the precious daughter of the Jiang family, whom Jiang Ru and Jun Zhontian had been talking about for a long time. Aunt. Jun Xiaoyao nodded slightly. You're making me sound old. You should call me sister. Jiang Shengyi pretended to be relaxed, as if to hide the strange feeling in her heart. She revealed her pearly white teeth and smiled charmingly as she teased him. At the same time, she was also observing Jun Xiaoyao. She didn't know what kind of physique he had. Jiang Luoli, on the other hand, had been blushing ever since Jun Xiaoyao appeared. She, who was usually delicate and lively, felt a little reserved at this moment. When the other guests saw this scene, they all sighed. It seemed that the pearl of the Jiang family was about to be moved. That was how superficial people who only cared about appearances were. Yi Xingyun looked at the bashful Jiang Luoli from one of the seats. He was so angry that his body trembled slightly. His face was extremely pale. How could this be? Yi Xingyu's brows were furrowed. To be honest, he didn't want to provoke Jun Xiaoyao. However, when he saw the scene in front of him, Yi Xingyun felt very heartbroken. Jiang Luoli was the woman that he wanted. Apart from his appearance, Yi Xingyun was confident that his talent, strength, and family background were not inferior to Jun Xiaoyao. Moreover, he had some dealings with Jiang Luoli in the secret realm of Luo Yu. However, Jun Xiaoyao had done nothing. Just his appearance alone was enough to make Jiang Luoli fall for him. Was there any justice in this world? So what if he was handsome? On the other side, Jun Zhangjian sighed and said, it's only been a few years. Xiaoyao has already grown to this level. Jun Zhangjian was now a little relieved that he didn't offend Jun Xiaoyao back then. Instead, he took out the supreme token of Yuantian and befriended him. That could be said to be the wisest decision that Jun Zhangjian had ever made. Beside him, Jun Shuahuang stared at Jun Xiaoyao. Her ice-blue eyes were also slightly dazed for a moment. However, she wasn't like Jiang Luoli, who was a complete dog for looks. This son of God really lives up to his reputation. His aura is unfathomable. Jun Shuahuang shook her head slightly. Jun Xiaoyao's entire body was shrouded in a mist of divine light. No one could see through him. They also noticed Jun Wanjie from the corner of their eyes. From the moment Jun Xiaoyao appeared, Jun Wanjie's gaze had been fixed on him. There was a faint trace of judgment and indifference in his eyes. Obviously, Jun Wanjie, who was born in the collateral family and had been looked down upon by others, was extremely displeased with this kind of genius from the direct family who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Why was he born with something that he had to work hard to get? It seems that Jun Wanjie doesn't like Xiaoyao. Jun Zhangjian whispered. To be honest, I'm a little jealous of this son of God's status and treatment. Zhun Shuahuang shook her head and said. Fortunately, Zhun Wanjie was just watching coldly and didn't do anything unnecessary. Next, the banquet officially began. Most people's attention was still on Zhun Xiaoyaro. The princess of the Great Shang dynasty stared at Zhun Xiaoyaro with her beautiful eyes, but she still shook her head and whispered, "I'm not worthy of Master Son of God." His words caused many of the surrounding forces to be shocked. The princess of the Great Shang dynasty, who was famous for her beauty, actually said that she wasn't worthy of the Son of God of the Zhun family. Who knows how strong the Son of God of the Zhun family is? Maybe he's just a good-looking guy. At this time, a low voice said. Only a few people heard it and looked over. It's the one with the kingly body of stars from the Yi family. Some people's eyes flashed. Was he secretly expressing his dissatisfaction? But the Son of God of the Zhun family didn't seem to have offended him. Young master, don't talk nonsense. The old sage-to-be servant next to Yi Xingyun changed his expression and whispered. Humph. Yi Xingyun's face was as gloomy as water. He was the genius of the Yi family of the ancients. Could he not even say a word? On the other side, Jiang Ru pulled Zhun Xiaoyaro and kept introducing Jiang Luoli. Xiaoyao, you're not young anymore. It's time for you to consider giving me a grandson, Jiang Ru said with a smile. Zhun Xiaoyaro was a little speechless when he heard this. What did she mean by not young anymore? Although Zhun Xiaoyaro looked tall and slender like a teenager of 14 or 15 years old, he was actually only 10 years old. Moreover, Zhun Xiaoyaro didn't feel anything when he looked at Jiang Luoli. If the marriage was really arranged, Zhun Xiaoyaro would feel like he was committing a crime. Jiang Luoli's face was blushing and she didn't dare to look at Zhun Xiaoyaro directly. TSK. Who was the one who said that she would rather die than compromise with an arranged marriage? Jiang Shengyi teased with a smile. Sister Shengyi, don't talk nonsense. When did I say that? Jiang Luoli puffed up her cheeks and shook her head like a rattle drum. She hurriedly denied it. As long as I don't admit it, it means that I didn't say it. But he really is the most handsome person I've ever seen. Jiang Luoli thought to herself. She now felt that an arranged marriage was quite good. Yes, it was really good. Seeing Zhun Xiaoyaro and Jiang Luoli together, Yi Xingyun was going crazy with jealousy. Smack. Yi Xingyun slammed the wine cup in his hand on the table. The entire hall suddenly fell silent. Chapter 28. Yi Xingyun's words silenced the lively atmosphere in the main hall. Many people from the major forces looked at Yi Xingyun in astonishment, as if they were looking at a fool. It's that guy with the kingly body of stars from the Yi family of the clan of the ancients. What is he trying to do? Yeah, this is the 10-years-old banquet of the Son of God of the Zhun family. How dare he say such a thing? I heard that Yi Xingyun seems to be quite fond of the precious daughter of the Jiang family. Many guests around were whispering to each other. They didn't dare to say anything. After all, the Yi family was also a famous clan of the ancients with a strong foundation and countless years of history. It was better for them not to get involved in this kind of conflict. The old servant beside Yi Xingyun suddenly changed his expression when he heard Yi Xingyun's words. Young master, don't mess around. That's enough, Uncle Fu. I'm not trying to cause trouble. I just got excited when I saw the Son of God of the Zhun family. Yi Xingyun directly interrupted the old servant's advice. He could no longer tolerate the woman he loved looking at Zhun Xiaoyaro with such a smitten look on her face. How about it, Son of God of the Zhun family? May I have the honor? Yi Xingyun suppressed the jealousy and anger in his heart and tried to speak as calmly as possible. He wasn't stupid. If he really spoke rudely at the Zhun family's banquet, he would be courting death. However, if it was just a friendly exchange, Yi Xingyun believed that the Zhun family wouldn't do anything to him. As expected, Zhun Zhantian and the others frowned slightly when they heard Yi Xingyun's words, but they didn't say anything. It wasn't because Yi Xingyun was backed by the Yi family of the ancients. Zhun Zhantian and the others also wanted to know how much progress Zhun Xiaoyaro had made after a year of closed-door cultivation. You are. Zhun Xiaoyao's expression remained calm. Yi Xingyun of the Yi family. Yi Xingyun looked directly at Zhun Xiaoyaro and said, "Oh, you are the one with the kingly body of stars." Zhun Xiaoyaro suddenly understood. He knew some of the young talents of the remote antiquity families. The most famous outlawed sky pride of the Yi clan of the ancients should be the legendary reincarnation of the sword demon, Yi Guchen. Wielding the Emperor Slayer sword, he was a peerless genius of the sword Dao who swept through the younger generation of the immortal domain. Rumor had it that he had never used a second sword strike when fighting against prodigies of the same generation. Because no one could withstand his first strike. Yi Xingyun possessed the kingly body of stars, which was not bad. However, he was no match for Yi Guchen. If Yi Guchen was here, Zhun Xiaoyaro might have been a little more interested. As for Yi Xingyun, Zhun Xiaoyaro really didn't think much of it. There's no need. This Zhun's strength is nothing special. There's no need for us to exchange pointers. Zhun Xiaoyaro shook his head. He was too lazy to deal with Yi Xingyun, so he found a lame excuse. Hearing Zhun Xiaoyao's words, some of the influential figures looked surprised. To be honest, Zhun Xiaoyao's appearance had indeed shocked them. His aura was profound and his temperament was otherworldly. He was like a banished immortal. However, in the face of Yi Xingyun's provocation, Zhun Xiaoyaro refused to fight. Instead, he said that his strength was nothing special. Was that really the case? Was the son of God of the Zhun family only a peerless spear? Zhun Zhanjian and the others were speechless when they heard this. What did he mean by nothing special? If Brother Xiaoyaro is nothing special, then I'll kill myself with a piece of tofu. Zhun Zhanjian was speechless. However, Yi Xingyun was unaware of Zhun Xiaoyao's true strength. Previously, Zhun Xiaoyao's breakthrough only attracted Yi Xingyun's attention. Now, seeing that Zhun Xiaoyaro was unwilling to fight, Yi Xingyun was anxious. If Zhun Xiaoyaro didn't fight, how could he show off in front of Jiang Luoli? After thinking for a while, Yi Xingyun said, "Son of God, you don't have to be so humble. If it's because your level is not high enough, then I can suppress my level to the peak of the divinity stage and fight with you." In Yi Xingyun's opinion, the 10-year-old Zhun Xiaoyaro was only at the divinity stage, no matter how monstrous he was. Yi Xingyun, on the other hand, was 16 or 17 years old and was already a master of the fifth sky of the true spirit level. Hearing Yi Xingyun's words, everyone in the hall turned to look at Zhun Xiaoyaro. If Zhun Xiaoyaro still didn't agree, then it would cause a lot of criticism. Zhun Xiaoyaro sighed inwardly. He couldn't be bothered to slap Yi Xingyun's face, but someone just had to give it to him. He glanced at Jiang Luoli and roughly knew why Yi Xingyun was acting this way. Femme fatale. You're so annoying. Why do you keep harping on Brother Xiaoyaro? Jiang Luoli was displeased. She wanted to have a good chat with Zhun Xiaoyaro and get to know him better. However, Yi Xingyun didn't know what was good for him and interfered. Luoli, I just wanted to. Yi Xingyun's face turned green. Jiang Luoli was calling Xiaoyaro brother. Jiang Luoli said impatiently, "What are you thinking? If you hurt Brother Xiaoyao's face, will you pay for it?" What the F***ck? Yi Xingyun choked and his face turned red. He almost couldn't help but swear. Did being handsome mean that he was superior to others and could do whatever he wanted? Yi Xingyun was even more jealous. Zhun Xiaoyaro was also speechless. Jiang Luoli could be the president of the Appearance Association. No need. Since you insist on sparring with the Son of God, then make your move, Zhun Xiaoyaro said calmly with one hand behind his back. Brother Xiaoyaro, you. Jiang Luoli hesitated. She was also a little worried that Zhun Xiaoyaro would be suppressed by Yi Xingyun. TSK. Luo Li is already worried about her future husband. Jiang Xingyi chuckled, revealing her pearly white teeth. Of course not. Jiang Luoli's pretty face turned red. Yi Xingyun's expression was serious. He couldn't wait to prove himself. He suppressed his cultivation level to the 9th level of the divinity stage. Zhun Xiaoyaro said calmly, "You can make the first move and you don't have to suppress your cultivation level." No need. Yi Xingyun refused directly. He knew that if he really did that, Zhun Xiaoyaro would have an excuse for his failure. That way, he wouldn't be able to show off and embarrass himself. How would he be able to impress Jiang Luoli? Sigh. Jun Xiaoyaro sighed. He didn't say anything else and directly activated the divine elephant overpowering force. During this year of closed-door cultivation, Jun Xiaoyaro had awakened another 10,000 granules of the giant elephant. In other words, Jun Xiaoyaro had now awakened a total of 40,000 granules of the giant elephant, which was equivalent to 400 million pounds of force. 400 million pounds of force. What kind of concept was that? One palm strike was enough to shatter ancient mountains and strike the stars in the 9 heavens. Rumble. The golden sacred blood in Jun Xiaoyao's body was surging. The surging golden blood and qi gushed out of his body, forming a faint shadow of an ancient divine elephant that suppressed the heavens. Jun Xiaoyaro simply pushed out with one hand. It was as if the hand of an ancient god was breaking through the earth. The force of the force caused the void to tremble and the entire hall to rumble violently. Everyone who came to attend the banquet, whether they were young geniuses or figures of the older generation, couldn't help but stand up, tongue-tied. The terrifying force made many of the figures of the older generation tremble with fear. Chapter 29. How is this possible? Your strength. Yi Xingyun roared. Feeling Jun Xiaoyao's power, he felt like his scalp was about to explode. Horror. Shock. Disbelief. How could this be called ordinary? Yi Xingyun wanted to curse in his heart. Not only him, but the guests around him also seemed to have been petrified. The son of God of the Jun family used the phrase ordinary, but it was very eloquent. Yi Xingyun's heart skipped a beat. But no matter what, he was still the pride of the Yi family of the clan of the ancients. His mental fortitude was not bad, so he reacted immediately. Star-plucking hand. Yi Xingyun did not hold back and immediately used his most powerful technique. He originally wanted to test Yi Xingyun's strength, but now it was completely unnecessary. Yi Xingyun stretched out his hand. The surging dharmic powers condensed into a giant hand with flowing lights and brilliant stars. It seemed to be branded with the orbit of the stars. This was a powerful martial art that could only be used by the kingly body of stars. The giant hand of stars collided with Jun Xiaoyao's palm. The golden dharmic powers surged and directly broke the giant hand of stars, then struck towards Yi Xingyun. Crack. Accompanied by a series of cracking sounds, Yi Xingyun was directly sent flying out of the main hall, leaving a trail on the ground. The crowd fell silent. Looking at Yi Xingyun, who was lying outside the main hall and coughing up blood, many of the heavenly talents felt their hair stand on end. Then, they looked at Jun Xiaoyaro with eyes that were filled with fear. Monster. A real little monster. Yi Xingyun was not a nobody. He was the pride of the Yi family of the ancients. Not to mention, he also had the kingly body of stars. Such a young heavenly talent was sent flying by Jun Xiaoyaro, who was only 10 years old. If this was not a monster, then what was? Not to mention these people, even Jiang Luoli, Jiang Shengyi, and the others were dumbfounded with their red lips wide open in disbelief. But soon after, Jiang Luoli's sparkling eyes flashed with splendor. Her criteria for choosing a partner was naturally to be handsome. That was the most important thing. If he was both handsome and powerful, then it would be even more perfect. Jun Xiaoyaro, on the other hand, was a perfect match for Jiang Luoli's image of Mr. Right. As for Jiang Shengyi, a strange look flashed across his clear eyes. That golden aura is indeed the sacred body of the ancients, Jiang Shengyi thought to himself. She wasn't the only one. The eyes of many great figures present flashed as they realized what was going on. So, it really is the sacred body of the ancients. No wonder it was able to trigger the pilgrimage of the 10,000 saints 10 years ago. After all, he has the sacred body of the human race. But isn't it rumored that the sacred body of the ancients has become useless? Why is the son of God of the Jun family still so powerful? Could it be that the Jun family spent a huge amount of resources to help the son of God of the Jun family break a few shackles? That's very likely. But even so, the sacred body of the ancients won't last long. After Jun Xiaoyaro made his move, almost everyone present was certain that he had the unique sacred body of the ancients. In the primordial era, the sacred body of the ancients was enough to be called a king. It was comparable to the great emperors and could rival the ancient emperors. But in the modern era, the status of the sacred body of the ancients was very awkward. Although the sacred body of the ancients was still in the top 10 among the 3,000 body types. But now, the sacred body of the ancients was far less intimidating than it was in the primordial era. You have the sacred body of the ancients. Outside the hall, Yi Xingyun struggled to get up. He felt a sharp pain in his chest. But he still had the kingly body of stars. His body was much stronger than the average genius. I told you that there was no need to spar. The result is obvious, Jun Xiaoyaro said, shaking his head slightly. It's not over yet. I wasn't prepared before. Yi Xingyun gritted his teeth. He was not willing to give up just like that. Young master, you. Uncle Fu, Yi Xingyun's old servant, stopped talking. Chaotic star finger. Yi Xingyun immediately made his move and pointed his finger. In an instant, the power of the stars gathered and turned into an ancient finger. It seemed to be able to crush the stars in outer space. Boring. Jun Xiaoyaro reached out his hand again. Golden qi and blood gushed out and turned into a giant golden palm. It broke the finger. Then, Jun Xiaoyaro reached out and grabbed. The surging power condensed into a dark purple spear, burning with the infernal flames. It was the spear of the underworld, the ultimate technique of the divine elephant overpowering force. Jun Xiaoyaro threw the spear of the underworld. A sharp whistle sounded in the void, and ripples spread out. The infernal flames billowed and the sharp spear of the underworld pierced toward Yi Xingyun. Yi Xingyun's expression changed drastically when he felt the power of the spear of the underworld. Heavenly Star Shield. Yi Xingyun took out a noble weapon. It was a shield shining with starlight. However, what made people gasp was that, the spear of the underworld, which was strengthened by 400 million pounds of force, pierced through the heavenly star shield and shattered it. Yi Xingyun's face was filled with horror. Jun Xiaoyao's moves made his hair stand on end and sent chills down his spine. Black hole palm. Yi Xingyun took out his ultimate technique and activated the special star spirit C in his dantian to the extreme. He struck out with his palm and it seemed to manifest a black hole. The spear of the underworld was swallowed into the black hole. However, Yi Xingyun also suffered from the backlash. He was forced to retreat dozens of steps and vomited blood. His arm was trembling violently. It's over. Jun Xiaoyaro used the combatant formula again. Endless golden light burst out and turned into thousands of divine weapons. Sabers, spears, swords, halberds, axes, hooks, and forks. They roared like a torrent and cut through the void. This power made many young geniuses from different forces turn pale and their hearts tremble. Constellation true form. Seeing this, Yi Xingyun roared into the sky and stopped suppressing his level. His cultivation of LV5 true spirit realm burst out. He knew that if he continued to suppress his level, he would really be suppressed by Jun Xiaoyao. However, Jun Xiaoyao's expression did not change at all. He had also completely revealed his cultivation base. Boom! His cultivation of LV9 true spirit realm gushed out and the golden magical power rose like a burning flame. This is LV9 true spirit realm. How is this possible? The son of God of the Jun family is only 10 years old. When Jun Xiaoyaro completely unleashed his cultivation, everyone in the hall was shocked as if they had seen a ghost. Yi Xingyun's face froze and he felt a chill in his heart. Jun Xiaoyaro was younger than him and his level was higher. Most importantly, Yi Xingyun was more handsome than him. Would Yi Xingyun be angry? Boom! The two of them exchanged blows and the result was as expected. The sacred body of the ancients could firmly suppress Yi Xingyun's kingly body of stars. Jun Xiaoyao's level was also higher than Yi Xingyun's. In the end, Yi Xingyun spat out blood. His sternum was broken and his body was covered with bleeding wounds. He was sent flying out of the hall like a rag bag. Young master. Uncle Fu's expression changed and he quickly checked on Yi Xingyun's condition. After checking, Uncle Fu heaved a sigh of relief. Although Yi Xingyun was seriously injured, his foundation was not damaged. Yi Xingyun's face was pale and he looked at Jun Xiaoyaro unwillingly. Brother Xiaoyaro is so handsome. Jiang Luoli's eyes sparkled. She stared at Zhang Xiaoyaro like a fangirl and drooled. She did not even look at Yi Xingyun. Seeing this, Yi Xingyun spat out a mouthful of blood. Anger rushed to his head and he fainted. At the moment of fainting, Yi Xingyun's consciousness seemed to have arrived at a strange place. He looked around and saw a magnificent constellation palace standing among the stars in the universe. In front of the constellation palace, a figure covered in the sun, moon, and stars had his back to him. It was as if the figure stood above the heavens. Chapter 30. The atmosphere in the hall was dead silent. Yi Xingyun, the proud son of the Yi family of the clan of the ancients, was so angry that he vomited blood and fainted. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would never have believed that the 10-year-old Zhang Xiaoyaro could defeat Yi Xingyun so easily. Most importantly, compared to Yi Xingyun's sorry state, Zhang Xiaoyao's white robe was spotless. There wasn't even a wrinkle on it. This was no longer a friendly match. It was a complete one-sided defeat. The son of God of the Zhang family is so terrifying. Many people were shocked. The divine child of the Zhang family will be one of the brightest stars of this era. He is destined to leave his name in the annals of history, a white-bearded old man with a transcendent aura exclaimed. The one who spoke is an old Taoist from the Daoji heavenly sect. He once preached at the North Mountain. I can't believe he has such a high opinion of the son of God of the Zhang family. Everyone was even more shocked when they heard the old Taoist from the Daoji heavenly sect's evaluation of Zhang Xiaoyaro. The beautiful princess of the great Shang dynasty was also in a daze as she murmured to herself. Once I met the son of God, I would be wrong for the rest of my life. Other men would no longer be pleasing to my eyes. The words of the princess of the great Shang dynasty broke the hearts of many men. What the princess of the great Shang dynasty meant was that after meeting the son of God of the Zhang family, other men would no longer be pleasing to her eyes. What kind of extraordinary existence could make the princess of the great Shang dynasty say such words? Everyone's eyes were locked onto Zhang Xiaoyaro at the moment. Zhang Xiaoyaro himself, on the other hand, was very calm. Defeating Yi Xingyun was no big deal to him. Thank you, Lord Son of God, for showing mercy. Our young master was just too impulsive. He didn't mean anything else. Uncle Fu, Yi Xingyun's old servant, hurriedly explained, fearing that Zhang Xiaoyaro would misunderstand. Although they were backed by the Yi family of the clan of the ancients, they didn't want to offend the Zhang family. Oh, of course I know. It's just a simple exchange of pointers, Zhang Xiaoyaro said with a smile. When he heard Zhang Xiaoyao's words, he looked at Yi Xingyun, who was covered in wounds and had fainted. How could this be called a friendly exchange? He had almost beaten him to death. Even Uncle Fu's mouth twitched. He forced out a smile and said, since Lord Son of God is magnanimous, then this old man will take the young master away first. Zhang Xiaoyaro nodded casually. After all, Yi Xingyun was a member of the Yi family of the clan of the ancients. Although Zhang Xiaoyaro was not afraid of him, he did not intend to do anything to him. Yi Xingyun was just an idiot who was impulsive because of a woman. After that, Uncle Fu took the unconscious Yi Xingyun and left the Zhang residence in disgrace. Haha, I'm sorry to spoil everyone's mood. This Zhang will drink a cup of wine as compensation. Zhang Xiaoyaro looked around, then raised the wine cup in his hand and drained it in one gulp. You're welcome, son of God. You're too kind. That's right. That's right. Such an exciting battle has really opened our eyes. All the people present, regardless of whether they were of the younger generation or the older generation, stood up and returned the toast. No one dared to remain seated. Zhang Zhangjian and Zhang Shuahuang also stood up to toast. Only one figure remained seated. He did not stand up, nor did he intend to return the toast. It was Zhang Wanjie. At this moment, Zhang Wanjie's face was cold and indifferent. There seemed to be thunder interweaving in the depths of his dark eyes. There was a hint of seriousness in his eyes. He had seen the battle between Zhang Xiaoyaro and Yi Xingyun just now. To be honest, Zhang Xiaoyao's strength had far exceeded his expectations. At such a young age, Yi Xingyun already had the combat strength of a top genius. What would happen in a few years? Zhang Xiaoyaro also noticed Zhang Wanjie. Is that Zhang Wanjie, the fifth sequence? He was born in a collateral family and was looked down on. Later, he accidentally obtained the supreme technique and the heavenly skill of tribulation transcendence. He awakened the Thunder Calamity Combat Constitution and rose to become the fifth sequence. Why does this script seem so familiar? Jun Xiaoyaro muttered to himself. Isn't this the plot of a loser who found a supreme technique and turned the tables? He's even older than Xiao Chen, who is a grandfather with a ring. However, Jun Xiaoyaro did not pay too much attention to it. As long as Jun Wanjie did not provoke him, he would not take the initiative to target him. Brother Xiaoyao, you were so cool when you attacked just now. Jiang Luoli stared at Jun Xiaoyaro with blazing eyes. The more she looked at him, the more she liked him. It's all right, Jun Xiaoyaro said as he sipped his tea. He was not interested in this kind of little girl. After all, she was not a bronze refining warlock. Moreover, Jiang Luoli was too short. If he really married her, when the time came, he would probably fall into the stomach. Not to mention that he had the sacred body of the ancients, and the divine treasure of the kidney was exceptionally strong. Jiang Ru smiled and said, "Is the girl moved? Do you want to settle down now?" Jiang Luoli heard this and blushed slightly. She twisted her fingers and said rather embarrassedly, "Mother, fut." Cough, cough. Jun Xiaoyao almost spat out the tea in his mouth. However, for the sake of his image, he swallowed it and coughed twice. "Xiaoyao, what's wrong with you?" "I think Luo Li is very good," Jiang Ru said. Jun Xiaoyao sighed and said, "Luo Li is 1.5 meters tall." "What, brother Xiaoyao, you actually said that I'm short?" Jiang Luoli's eyes widened. She raised her snow-white neck and looked up at Jun Xiaoyao. She was only 12 years old, 2 years older than Jun Xiaoyao, but her height only reached Jun Xiaoyao's chest. It was the most adorable height difference. "Is that not the case?" Jun Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows. Jiang Luoli ground her sparkling canine teeth and puffed up her cheeks. Her big black eyes moved, revealing a hint of slyness. Then, she opened her small mouth and bit Jun Xiaoyao's arm. She wanted to leave a mark on Jun Xiaoyao's body. A mark that belonged exclusively to her, Jiang Luoli. In this way, Jun Xiaoyao would not ignore or forget about her. Then, after she bit down, it hurts. Jiang Luoli cried out in pain. One of her canine teeth was broken. She covered her mouth and tears welled up in her eyes. "You know I have the sacred body of the ancients and you still bit me. Are you a dog?" Jun Xiaoyao was speechless. He had the sacred body of the ancients, which made his body comparable to a divine weapon. At his current stage, he could fight with his bare hands and even shatter a noble weapon. Jiang Luoli wanted to leave a bite mark on his body. How could that be possible? Jun Xiaoyao grabbed Jiang Luoli's waist and slapped Jiang Luoli's delicate butt. To deal with such a naughty little girl, she had to be beaten into submission. Smack. There was a crisp sound. Jiang Luoli was stunned. Her watery eyes widened in disbelief. Jiang Shengyi's expression froze as well. Jiang Ru's face was full of pride, as expected of her son. All the people present awkwardly avoided eye contact. Chapter 31. Jun Xiaoyao came back to his senses and realized that it was inappropriate for him to do that in public, so he let go of Jiang Luoli's waist. Jiang Luoli's face was so red that it looked like it was going to bleed. She was so ashamed that she wanted to crawl into a hole. "Boo-hoo, I got spanked in public." Jiang Luoli threw herself into Jiang Shengyi's arms and buried her head like an ostrich. She was the pearl of the Jiang family, a virgin. It was only natural that she would feel ashamed to be treated like that. Jiang Shengyi touched Jiang Luoli's little head and couldn't help but roll her eyes at Jun Xiaoyao. Although this nephew of his looked like a celestial being that had been banished from the immortal world, he was still very handsome. However, he seemed to be a little naughty. After Jiang Shengyi rolled her eyes at him, Jun Xiaoyao took notice of his nominal aunt. That fluctuation. Is it really the innate Taoist embryo? Jun Xiaoyao's eyes dimmed as he muttered to himself. Jiang Ru had already told Jun Xiaoyao about it before. Jiang Luoli was the pearl of the Jiang family. She had the rare elemental spirit Taoist body, which was enough to rank in the top 100 of the 3,000 constitutions. Jiang Shengyi, on the other hand, was the goddess of the Jiang family. She had the even rarer innate Taoist embryo. This constitution was not much weaker than the sacred body of the ancients. The sacred body of the ancients, the innate Taoist embryo. Rumor has it that a long time ago, there was a great emperor who touched the realm of the immortal path. He had a supreme constitution, the innate sacred body of the ancients. Zhun Xiaoyao's eyes flickered. He stopped thinking about it. At that moment, Zhun Zhantian stepped forward, cleared his throat, and said, "Thank you, seniors, for coming to my grandchild's banquet. Today, the Zhun family has another announcement to make at this banquet." When he said this, Zhun Zhantian's face became solemn and formal. "What is it?" Seeing the serious expression on Zhun Zhantian's face, everyone was flabbergasted. "I'm sure everyone knows that there are 10 sequences in the Zhun family, and each of them is a peerless genius. However, there is another position above the 10 sequences." Zhun Zhantian's words caused the expressions of everyone in the hall to freeze. Then, as if they had thought of something, their expressions suddenly changed. The 2 sequences, Zhun Zhanjian and Zhun Shuahuang, also seemed to have thought of something. They suddenly stood up, their faces filled with shock and disbelief. Zhun Wanjie's face became even more solemn. Zhun Xiaoyaro, the son of God of the Zhun family, will be the sequence 0 of the Zhun family. His position will be above the 10 sequences. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone fell silent. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock. Everyone knew what sequence 0 meant. It was because the previous sequence 0 of the Zhun family was Zhun Xiaoyao's father, the white-robed divine King Zhun Wuhui. The news announced by Zhun Zhantian was like a huge rock falling into the ocean, setting off huge waves. It was conceivable that when the news spread today, the entire Huangtian mystic realm would be in an uproar. After all, the sequence 0 of the Zhun family was extraordinary. If nothing unexpected happened, he would be the core figure of the Zhun family in the future, and his existence would be like a pillar. In terms of status, even the first sequence was slightly weaker than the sequence 0. Brother Xiaoyaro has already been decided to be the sequence 0. Zhun Zhanjian took a deep breath and suppressed the shock in his heart. He had thought that Zhun Xiaoyaro was likely to join the fight for the sequences after he turned 10 years old. As it turned out, he didn't need to join the fight at all. He was already decided to be the sequence 0. In this regard, although Zhun Zhanjian was shocked, he was not jealous. After all, he had personally experienced Zhun Xiaoyao's strength. He was indeed qualified to be the sequence 0. "I didn't expect that the Son of God was already the sequence 0. Zhun Shuahuang's chest heaved up and down. She was also shocked. Zhun Wanjie, on the other hand, clenched his fists tightly. There seemed to be a vast amount of lightning intertwining in his eyes, indicating that his heart was not calm. "Why?" Zhun Wanjie said coldly in his heart. Why was Zhun Xiaoyaro able to get something that he had to go through so much trouble to get? The identity of the Son of God was not a big deal. Now, even the supreme identity of the sequence 0 was directly given to Zhun Xiaoyaro. 4 geniuses like Zhun Wanjie, just to compete for the identity of the sequence, he had to go through many difficult tests before he finally stood out among the geniuses of the Zhun family. Zhun Wanjie felt indignant, unsatisfied, and indignant. Zhun Zhantian glanced around and saw the shocked and awestruck expressions. He couldn't help but nod in satisfaction. This was the effect he wanted. After the 10-years-old banquet, it was time for Zhun Xiaoyaro to enter the world. And before that, the Zhun family had to build momentum for Zhun Xiaoyaro. The identity of the sequence 0 was undoubtedly the fastest way to build Zhun Xiaoyao's reputation. Is he going to take over his father's business? Many people's gazes began to change as they looked at Zhun Xiaoyaro. Zhun Xiaoyao's father, Zhun Wuhui, was the sequence 0 of the previous generation. Now, he had also become the sequence 0. Just the identity of the Son of God alone made Zhun Xiaoyaro indescribably noble. Now, there was also the identity of the sequence 0. With these 2 identities combined, there were probably not many people who would dare to provoke Zhun Xiaoyaro. Big brother Xiaoyaro is actually the sequence 0? Jiang Luoli poked her small face out of Jiang Shengyi's arms and blinked her eyes. One of the people she admired the most was Zhun Xiaoyao's father, the white-robed divine king, Zhun Wuhui. Now that Zhun Xiaoyao had taken over his father's business, it made Zhun Xiaoyao seem even more charming, as if he was the next white-robed divine king. But big brother Xiaoyao actually spanked my butt and said I was short. How bad? Jiang Luoli muttered. Although she was a little angry with Zhun Xiaoyao, she couldn't resist the fact that Zhun Xiaoyao was really handsome. Regardless of strength, identity, background, or appearance, he was almost unparalleled in the world. Jiang Luoli definitely couldn't get rid of the law of fragrance. Jiang Ru's eyes revealed a trace of reminiscence and emotion as she muttered to herself, Wu Hui, did you see that? Our child has now become the sequence 0, just as all the forces were in shock. An ice-cold voice sounded. Clan Elder, I have a question. Upon hearing this voice, the expressions of the two sequences, Zhun Zhantian and Zhun Shuahuang, changed. Zhun Zhantian also looked over and secretly frowned. The person who spoke was none other than the sequence 5, Zhun Wanjie. Zhun Xiaoyao also looked over with an expressionless face. He definitely wanted the identity of the sequence 0. If Zhun Wanjie didn't know what was good for him, Zhun Xiaoyao wouldn't back down either. What's your question? Zhun Zhantian asked calmly. May I ask if Zhun Xiaoyao has ever participated in the sequence competition? Zhun Wanjie asked in a deep voice. No, Zhun Zhantian replied. May I ask if Zhun Xiaoyao has ever made any significant contributions to the family? Zhun Wanjie continued to ask. No. Zhun Zhantian's face darkened. Zhun Xiaoyao hadn't stepped out into the world yet. How could he have made any contributions to the Zhun family? May I ask if Zhun Xiaoyao has ever passed the 5 stages, killed the 6 generals, and won the position of the sequence 0? Zhun Wanjie asked 3 questions in a row. No. Zhun Zhantian's voice was slightly cold. If someone from another force had questioned him like this, Zhun Zhantian would have slapped him out. However, the person who spoke was the sequence 5 of the Zhun family. If he attacked him, the Zhun family would lose face. If that's the case, how can Zhun Xiaoyao become the sequence 0 for no reason? Zhun Wanjie suddenly stood up and questioned sternly. The violent lightning of the thunder tribulation flickered in his eyes. The atmosphere was dead silent. Even Zhun Zhantian couldn't say anything for a while. In this dead silence, Zhun Xiaoyao took a step forward and stood with his hands behind his back, like an immortal in white. Since you have so many questions, I'll tell you. The identity of the sequence 0 was bestowed by the 18th ancestor. The reason he did so was because he trusted me. Chapter 32. With me around, the Zhun family will never have to worry about not having a great emperor. Zhun Xiaoyao's words were majestic, as if they could swallow mountains and rivers. Zhun Xiaoyao's words seemed to echo throughout the great hall and even the entire Zhun family. At that moment, the faces of all the people from the major forces who came to the banquet froze. Rumble. The sky changed color and thunder rumbled, as if they were echoing Zhun Xiaoyao's word. These words were not to be said casually. Some words would lead to great karma. The Son of God of the Zhun family has an invincible spirit. Listening to the Son of God's words, could it be that he has the confidence to become a great emperor? The road to becoming a great emperor is going to be interesting. Many of the powerhouses of the older generation side. The hearts of the beauties from the major forces were also swayed by Zhun Xiaoyao's words. Which beauty did not want to be matched with a hero? A real man should be like this. The princess of the great Shang side, her heart had already fallen. As for Jiang Luoli, the corners of her mouth were almost dripping with saliva. She did not look like the pearl of the Jiang family at all. Zhun Xiaoyao did not care about the gazes of the people around him. Instead, he looked down at Zhun Wanjie and said lightly, "Are you satisfied with this answer?" Zhun Xiaoyao's rhetorical question made Zhun Wanjie's throat choke. His cheeks were gloomy, but he could not say anything to refute. That was because even he had almost been intimidated by Zhun Xiaoyao's invincible spirit just moments ago. At that moment, an old voice came from the depths of the Zhun family's residence. Good. That one word made everyone's expression change abruptly. It's the 18th ancestor. Zhun Zhantian's voice trembled slightly. The 18th ancestor was an ancestor of the Jun family, and he did not show up easily. The last time he showed up was when Jun Xiaoyaro was born. This time, although the 18th ancestor still did not show up, the word good was obviously praising Jun Xiaoyaro for his spirit. Confirming one's Dao and becoming an emperor was not something that anyone dared to boast about. Even some of the top geniuses would feel uneasy and uncertain. Since the 18th ancestor had spoken, what else could Jun Wanjie say? No matter how arrogant and domineering he would never dare to contradict the 18th ancestor. Wan Jie has been rude. I still have other matters to attend to. Goodbye. Jun Wanjie glanced coldly at Jun Xiaoyaro, then turned around and left without any hesitation. If he continued to stay here, it would only add to his frustration. Jun Zhantian's expression softened a little when he saw this. Although this Jun Wanjie's character was somewhat unreasonable, he was not a fool and could still see the big picture. If he was unwilling to give up and ended up fighting with Jun Xiaoyaro on the spot, it would be a disgrace to the Jun family. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at Jun Wanjie's back as he left, thinking of his cold gaze just now. He knew that Jun Wanjie was still unwilling to give up. Even if he stopped now, he would still find trouble with him in the future. Jun Wanjie, I hope you're not as stupid as Xiao Chen. Otherwise, even if you're a member of the Jun family, I won't hold back at all, Jun Xiaoyaro muttered to himself. He would sweep away any obstacle that stood in his way. It didn't matter if the obstacle came from the outside world or from within the family. With Jun Wanjie's departure, the atmosphere in the hall returned to its original state. Congratulations, son of God. Jun Shuahuang stood up and raised her glass to Jun Xiaoyaro. She didn't have the same hostility toward Jun Xiaoyaro as Jun Wanjie did. At most, she was a little envious. Thank you. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled and raised his glass to return the gesture. He had always appreciated people who could see the big picture. Congratulations, son of God. Jun Zhanjian also stood up to congratulate him. He didn't address Jun Xiaoyaro as Xiaoyao's younger brother anymore because he knew that he no longer had that qualification. Son of God's identity and Sequence Zero's identity. In the younger generation of the Jun family, there shouldn't be anyone with a higher status than Jun Xiaoyaro. Even the Sequence 1 who had been in seclusion all this time, or the Sequence 2 and Sequence 3 who had been training outside, had a lower status than Jun Xiaoyaro. I really don't know what kind of attitude those people would have if they knew that Xiaoyao's younger brother had become Sequence 0, Jun Zhanjian thought to himself. Although they were both sequences of the Jun family, Jun Zhanjian didn't even have the courage to draw his sword when facing the top sequences. To be able to become one of the top sequences of the Jun family, none of them were simple people. They either had polychoria or some kind of taboo inheritance. Jun Xiaoyaro naturally knew that those sequences weren't simple. However, he believed that with his talent and strength, he would be able to settle any trouble. Then, the banquet continued. Jun Xiaoyaro was wondering why the system hadn't prompted him to check in yet. At that moment, in the sky outside the Jun family's mountain gate, an arrogant, cold, and mocking voice suddenly sounded. Son of God of the Jun family, your tone is indeed arrogant. I wonder if your strength is worthy of your tone. Hearing this voice, everyone in the hall trembled. Who was this voice? Who dared to say such words at the Son of God of the Jun family's 10-years-old banquet? Even if you want to die, you shouldn't die in such a way. Outside the hall, many people from various forces looked at the sky outside the hall. In the distant sky, a Jiao dragon with green wings on its back crossed the sky, and a group of people stood on top of it. Some had horns on their heads, some had wings on their backs, and some had scales on their bodies. At a glance, they didn't look like humans. The young man in the lead was dressed in a golden robe with 2 dragon horns on his head. His expression was arrogant and unruly. The words just now came from his mouth. That's the Archean royalty, the dragon son of Zulong. An old man from a major force took a deep breath and said. The Archean royalty was a superforce comparable to the clan of the Ancients, the Supreme Sect, and the immortal Jin dynasty. The ancient emperor of the Archean royalty was comparable to the great emperors of the human race. In some eras, the ancient emperors even dominated the immortal realm, standing above billions of creatures. Zulong was the top force in the Archean royalty, on par with the top royal families such as Wanhuang Spirit Mountain and the ancient Chilean Cave. And now, the dragon son of Zulong came to the 10-years-old banquet of the Jun family's Son of God. As long as one wasn't a fool, one should know that Zulong didn't come with good intentions. Some people couldn't help but think of the feud between Zulong and the Jun family, and their eyes couldn't help but flicker. It seemed that they were going to see another good show today. Zulong. Jun Xiaoyaro muttered to himself. He had heard Jun Zhantian mention this force before. Zulong was the Jun family's enemy. In this life, Zulong produced a forbidden first-generation Long Haotian who had the blood of the Emperor Dragon. He had crushed many young geniuses of the Jun family. Of course, the Jun family had also tortured and killed geniuses of Zulong. The two forces were like fire and water. Even his father, Jun Wuhui, the white-clad divine king, had tortured and killed a quasi-supreme from Zulong when he was in the saint stage. That was the battle that made Jun Wuhui famous. What bad luck. Jun Zhantian's face darkened. It was impossible for them to invite Zulong to the banquet. What's wrong? The Jun family of the ancients doesn't even dare to let people in? Long Haotian said arrogantly. As soon as he said that, Jun Zhanjian, Jun Shuahuang, and the other sequences were all furious. This Zulong dragon's son was really arrogant. Grandpa, let them in. They're just a few loaches. Chapter 33. Jun Xiaoyaro did not avoid the topic and directly said it. As soon as he said this, all the cultivators present were stunned, and then they sighed in their hearts. As expected of the son of God of the Jun family, he dared to say that Zulong's son was a loach. Long Haotian was not deaf, and he obviously heard Jun Xiaoyao's words. His eyes narrowed slightly, and a cold light flashed in them. The purpose of his visit this time was to disgust the Jun family. He wanted to trample on the son of God of the Jun family at the 10-years-old banquet of the son of God of the Jun family and make Zulong famous. After all, Zulong's reputation had never been good before. Jun Wuhui, as a saint, had torn apart Zulong, a quasi-supreme, with his bare hands, making Zulong the laughingstock of the Huangtian mystic realm. Although no forces dared to talk about it in front of the people of Zulong, they were all mocking Zulong behind his back. Therefore, Long Haotian also wanted to return the favor and trample on Jun Wuhui's descendant. Long Haotian also had the confidence to do so. He had integrated a dragon essence. Although he had not completely refined it, it was enough for him to stand at the top of the younger generation. He was not afraid of anyone except for a few supreme geniuses. Under Jun Zhantian's tacit consent, the guards of the Jun family did not stop Long Haotian and the others from entering. In addition to Long Haotian, some young geniuses of the far ancient royal family also followed. Although the far ancient royal family was slightly weaker than the Archean royalty, they were still a top force. Unlike Long Haotian, these beings of the far ancient royal family were still a little afraid. After all, the Jun family was one of the most famous and prosperous families of the ancients. Their actions were tantamount to provocation, and it would be strange if they were not afraid. However, with Long Haotian in front of them, these beings of the far ancient royal family still calmed down. If the sky collapsed, there was someone higher to hold it up. What were they afraid of? On the other side, Jun Xiaoyaro glanced at Long Haotian and the others indifferently. Suddenly, he noticed a familiar figure. A charming woman in a blue dress followed behind Long Haotian. Her eyes were filled with resentment as she stared at Jun Xiaoyaro and Jun Linglong. It's him. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his eyebrows slightly. He saw a figure that he thought he would never see again. It's you, Lan Qingya. What's going on? On the other side, Jun Zhanjian couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment after sweeping his gaze across the battlefield. Didn't he banish Lan Qingya from the Jun family? Why would he appear next to Long Haotian now? Hearing Jun Zhanjian's reprimand, the corners of Long Haotian's mouth suddenly curled into a playful smile. He reached out and lifted Lan Qingya's snow-white chin right in front of Jun Zhongjian. His eyes were filled with provocation as he said, "What are you talking about? She's my slave right now, isn't she?" "Yes, Qingya is Master Long's slave," Lan Qingya said obediently. "You be *tch. Zhang Zhangjian's black hair fluttered in the wind. His face was cold, and his eyes flashed with murderous intent. Because he missed their past relationship, he only chased Lan Qingya away and didn't make things difficult for her. In the end, Lan Qingya lured Zulong's people here. One had to know that her previous identity was Zhang Zhangjian's follower. After such a thing happened, how would the elders of the Zhang family view him? On top of that, Long Haotian used Lan Qingya to humiliate the Zhang family's sequence. Where would Zhang Zhangjian put his face? Thinking of this, Zhang Zhangjian's heart sank. Out of the corner of his eye, he could faintly see that the elders of the Zhang family's faces were somewhat gloomy. It wasn't good for the older generation to intervene in this kind of competition between the younger generation. It would ruin their reputation. Damn it, if this matter isn't handled properly, I might lose my sequence status. Zhang Zhangjian clenched his fists. Just as Zhang Zhangjian's expression changed, Zhang Xiaoyaro stepped forward and said indifferently, I didn't expect that Zulong's dragon's son would have such a hobby. Hobby? Long Haotian frowned and looked at Zhang Xiaoyaro. This ridiculously handsome young man was the target he wanted to trample under his feet today. I didn't expect you to have a hobby of picking up broken shoes. You're willing to accept someone my Zhang family's sequence doesn't want. You're really an old hero. Zhang Xiaoyao's tone was understated. Hearing this, Long Haotian's eyes widened and his face immediately turned green. It became extremely ugly. Wasn't this saying that he, Long Haotian, was picking up trash that others didn't want? Lan Qingya's face was as pale as a sheet. She was so embarrassed that her fingers were trembling. No woman wanted to be called a broken shoe. Zhang Xiaoyao's two simple sentences immediately turned the situation around. Originally, Long Haotian wanted to humiliate the Zhang family's sequence. But now, he was the one being mocked. Although the people from the various forces around didn't dare to laugh at Long Haotian openly, their eyes were full of ridicule and contempt. Son of God! Zhang Zhangjian's heart trembled. Zhang Xiaoyaro was helping him out of his predicament. At the thought of this, Zhang Zhangjian looked at Zhang Xiaoyaro with a faint sense of gratitude. What Zhang Xiaoyaro said was all it took to resolve the awkwardness and crisis he was in. We're all family. Don't say anything unnecessary. Zhang Xiaoyaro smiled faintly. Zhang Zhangjian nodded heavily, but he had made a decision in his heart. Zhang Xiaoyaro was worthy of his loyalty and following. Son of God is indeed unfathomable. With just a few words, he resolved Zhang Zhangjian's dilemma. Zhang Xuehuang muttered to herself. Zhang Xiaoyao's quick-wittedness was not something a 10-year-old boy should be capable of. Wow, I see another side of brother Xiaoyaro again. Jiang Luoli exclaimed. Zhang Xiaoyaro not only looked like a fairy, but he was also extremely powerful. His EQ and wisdom were also outstanding. With just a few words, he made Zulong the dragon's son speechless and humiliated him. Mph, is Zhang Wuhui's descendant only good at talking? That's a little disappointing. Long Haotian's face was as gloomy as water. That's right. Isn't it just the sacred body of the ancients? Do you really think you're invincible? You're nothing in front of the dragon's son, Lan Qingya said sarcastically. With Long Haotian behind her, she dared to speak. You're just a bug. How dare you talk so much? Zhang Xiaoyaro said with a cold look in his eyes. In his eyes, Lan Qingya was already a dead person. It was only a matter of time before she died. Since Lan Qingya was in such a hurry to be reincarnated, Zhang Xiaoyaro could only fulfill her wish. Rumble. Zhang Xiaoyaro raised his hand. Endless golden divine power surged and turned into a giant palm, directly slamming towards Lan Qingya. This sudden action was out of everyone's expectations. How dare you attack in front of me? You're too arrogant. Long Haotian's eyes immediately narrowed like golden dragon eyes. He wanted to attack to protect Lan Qingya. If the Son of God wants to kill, no one can stop me. Zhang Xiaoyao's voice was as cold as a god's. He raised his other hand and thousands of divine weapons surged out. It was the army attack formula. The torrent of divine weapons poured towards Long Haotian, causing his expression to change. Zhang Xiaoyao's strength was beyond his expectations. Rumble. In the eyes of many forces, Long Haotian's body suddenly retreated. His arms trembled violently, and a trace of horror appeared in his eyes. At that moment, the giant golden palm was already pressing down on Lan Qingya's head. "No! Save me, dragon's son!" Lan Qingya's face was as pale as paper. Her beautiful eyes were filled with extreme fear as she let out a shrill scream. However, as the giant golden palm slammed down, her scream came to an abrupt end. The entire book. Chapter 34. Boom. The giant golden palm made of magical power came crashing down like a corner of the heavens. Accompanied by a hair-raising cracking sound, fresh blood spurted out from the giant golden palm. The blood even splashed onto Long Haotian's body, causing his entire body to be covered in blood. Stunned. Astonished. At that moment, all the people from the various forces were silent. They didn't expect Zhun Xiaoyao to be so overbearing. He attacked without saying anything and killed Lan Qingya with a single palm. Moreover, he did it in front of Long Haotian. Many observant people also noticed that Zhun Xiaoyao knocked Long Haotian back with a casual move. Although Long Haotian was caught off guard, the fact that he was knocked back with a single blow was enough to explain some problems. As the giant palm made of magical power dissipated, there was only a pile of mangled flesh left on the spot. It was a nauseating sight. She was a beauty just a moment ago, and the next moment, she was turned into a pile of mangled flesh. The contrast was too drastic. Many people looked at Zhun Xiaoyao with a kind of respect. This deity's son is truly decisive. Even if it's a woman, he would still kill her. This is the son of God's demeanor. If he was the kind of person who showed mercy when he saw a woman, people would look down on him. Some of the old antiques of the major forces were whispering to each other. Zhun Xiaoyao's performance lived up to his identity as the son of God and sequence 0 of the Zhun family. You deserve to die. Long Haotian's eyes were burning with anger, but at the same time, there was a look of horror in his eyes. Zhun Xiaoyao had only stopped him with a casual move, yet Long Haotian felt an almost unstoppable divine power from that move. As the son of the dragon of Zulong, his physical body was the best among the top geniuses. However, Zhun Xiaoyao's casual move made his arms tremble so much that they felt like they were going to shatter. Even if Zhun Xiaoyao has the sacred body of the ancients, his physical body can't be this strong, Long Haotian said coldly with a gloomy face. At that moment, a few far ancient royal prodigies who had followed Long Haotian stepped forward and shouted angrily. "Son of God of the Zhun family, you are truly despicable. You actually dared to launch a sneak attack." "That's right. If you hadn't suddenly attacked, how could Lord Dragon's son have possibly been forced back?" Clearly, these primordial royal prodigies were trying to save Long Haotian's face. "How dare you? The son of God of the Zhun family is not someone you ants can casually criticize." Zhun Zhanjian's eyes fluttered as the long sword on his back rose into the air. He held it in his hand and a terrifying sword intent spread out. Today, Zhun Xiaoyao was like a benefactor to Zhun Zhanjian. Zhun Xiaoyao helped him out, so Zhun Zhanjian naturally had to return the favor. Zhun Shuahuang stepped forward as well. Her icy blue eyes seemed to be filled with coldness. "You have no right to be presumptuous in the Zhun family." For a moment, the young prodigies of the far ancient royal prodigies were confronting the Zhun family's sequence. Their fighting spirit and murderous intent filled the air. On the other side, Zhun Xiaoyao stood with his hands behind his back with a cold expression. Zhun Zhanjian and Zhun Shuahuang, on the other hand, were full of fighting spirit. On the other side, Long Haotian was full of vigor and his eyes were filled with gloominess. The group of far ancient royal beings around him were also in high spirit. "Let me, Niu Dingtian, have a taste of this legendary divine child of the Zhun family. Let's see how capable he is." A tall and burly young man stepped forward. He had 2 black horns on his head. With every step he took, the earth seemed to tremble. That is Niu Dingtian, a young powerhouse from the far ancient royal demonic Bull Mountain. Rumor has it that he once fought against 10 human geniuses alone. Many young geniuses from different forces whispered. This was a rather famous genius from the far ancient royal family. "You are not qualified to fight against the Son of God." Zhun Zhanjian's figure flashed and his sword swept across the sky. So what if you are the son of God of the Jun family? So what if you are sequence 0? Today's banquet will be a disgrace to the Jun family. A beautiful woman with a pair of wings on her back made a move. She was a genius from the far ancient royal family, the winged human tribe. My Jun family is not to be provoked by any Tom, Dick, or Harry. Jun Shuahuang's tone was indifferent. She raised her jade-like hand and the endless cold air around her condensed into ice spears. In addition, some famous beings from the far ancient royal family also made a move at the same time. For a moment, magic power surged and divine light flashed across the sky. The void exploded and the surroundings shook. Jun Zhanjian and Jun Shuahuang, the two sequences of the Jun family, blocked all the geniuses from the far ancient royal family. 9 swords of the rising sun. Jun Zhanjian possessed the heart-illuminated sword. Any sword technique could be cultivated to the peak of perfection. His 9 swords pierced through the air and slashed down like 9 divine lights. A being from the far ancient royal family was torn into pieces and died on the spot. Cold air flowed around Jun Shuahuang as the ice spears pierced through. A being from the far ancient royal family screamed as his body was pierced through. The sequences of the Jun family are so strong, many guests from different forces could not help but exclaim. The most eye-catching person at this banquet was naturally Jun Xiaoyao. However, Jun Zhanjian, Jun Shuahuang, and the other sequences of the Jun family were also shining brightly at this moment. Jun Zhanjian is ranked 10th among the 10 sequences of the Jun family, and Jun Shuahuang is only ranked 7th. Even so, their strength is still shocking. TSK, TSK. I heard that among the top 5 sequences of the Jun family, there are people with polychoria and supreme geniuses who have obtained forbidden inheritances. Their strength is unbelievably strong. Sigh, ordinary forces would be proud if they had one genius like this. However, the Jun family has 10 of them, not to mention, there is also the son of God of the Jun family. Sequence 0 has not appeared for a long time. This is the foundation of the clan of the ancients. It's nothing to be envious of. Some of the old-timers from first-rate forces sighed and were envious at the same time. This was the Jun family, an extremely glorious and indestructible top-notch clan of the ancient. Long Haotian's face was gloomy as he looked at the geniuses of the far ancient royal family who were bleeding. He had come this time to trample Jun Xiaoyao under his feet. As it turned out, Jun Xiaoyao was safe and sound, while the people on his side were almost all dead. Indestructible sword body, 10,000 swords as one. Jun Zhanjian activated the power of his indestructible sword body. 10,000 sword qi appeared, swept across the void, and finally condensed into a sword that could cut the sky. Niu Dingtian, the young genius of the demonic Bull Mountain, was directly cut in half by the sword, and blood burst out. Frozen snow lotus. Jun Shuahuang raised her jade-like hands, and an endless amount of ice magic power converged to form a magnificent ice lotus. It looked beautiful, but it seemed to contain the power to freeze eternally. Go! Jun Shuahuang threw the snow lotus at the genius of the Feathermen tribe. Oh no! The genius of the Feathermen tribe turned pale. Feeling that powerful cold air, she knew that she couldn't block it at all. At this critical moment, a figure like a fierce dragon broke free from its shackles. It was Long Haotian. His brows were tightly furrowed, and his golden dragon eyes were filled with anger. Long Haotian could not stand it anymore. Boom! Long Haotian stretched out his hand, and a majestic magic power surged, faintly condensing into a golden dragon claw. It had the power to tear the heavens and earth apart and shake the universe. It's Zulong's top-tier martial arts, the severing dragon palm. Many guests exclaimed. This was a great magical power of the lair of Zulong that was not taught to outsiders. It was extremely powerful. Bang! The golden dragon claw destroyed the snow lotus, and then it continued to land on Jun Shuahuang's chest. Oh no, be careful. Jun Zhanjian saw the situation and shouted. He wanted to save her, but it was too late. Jun Shuahuang was also slightly surprised. She did not expect Long Haotian to suddenly intervene. As the dragon son of the lair of Zulong, the power of the severing dragon hand was extremely powerful. Even Jun Shuahuang could not avoid it. Just as the golden dragon claw was about to hit Zhun Shuahuang's chest, a figure flashed out at an extremely fast speed and blocked in front of Zhun Shuahuang. The golden dragon claw landed squarely on the man's chest. Son of God. Zhun Shuahuang's face suddenly changed. Full edition. Chapter 35. Boom. The sound of a violent collision was heard. Smoke and dust rose, and heaven and earth shook. All the guests were silent as they stared blankly at the white-robed figure who was hit by the severing dragon hand. Long Haotian's sudden attack had caught everyone off guard. Zhun Xiaoyao's extremely fast reaction speed was even more surprising. However, Long Haotian had used Zulong's top-notch technique, the severing dragon hand. Once a technique like this was unleashed, even if one had a noble weapon to protect themselves, they would still be heavily injured, let alone being able to defend against this attack. Long Haotian had used this technique to kill more than 10 geniuses from top-notch orthodoxes. Son of God. Zhun Shuahuang's face quickly turned pale. If Zhun Xiaoyaro was seriously injured or something happened to him because of her, Zhun Shuahuang would not be able to absolve herself from the blame even if she died. After all, she was not as important to the Zhun family as Zhun Xiaoyaro was. Brother Xiaoyaro. Jiang Luoli's pretty face also changed. Jiang Ru, Jiang Shengyi, Zhun Zhantian, and the others also changed their expressions. Zhun Xiaoyaro was now the most important person among the younger generation of the Zhun family. If anything happened to him, the consequences would be unimaginable. This. Will the Zhun family's Son of God's 10-years-old banquet turn into a bloodbath? Is the legend of the Zhun family's Son of God going to end before it even began? All the guests who came to the banquet froze. If that was the case, the Zhun family's reputation would plummet. Zulong's reputation would soar. At this moment, the world was dead silent. Countless pairs of eyes were gathered on the peerless figure in white. That's not right. The old Daoist from the Daoji heavenly sect said softly. Logically speaking, if one was hit by Long Haotian's severing dragon hand, one would at least spit out blood and fly backward, if not be smashed into pieces. However, Zhun Xiaoyaro did not move at all, and there was no expression on his face. Only a pair of eyes that were as deep as an ancient well were filled with extreme indifference. At this moment, everyone sensed that something was wrong. Zhun Xiaoyao's reaction was nothing out of the ordinary. His body didn't even move an inch. Is the Son of God forcing himself? Some people looked and murmured in their hearts. However, Long Haotian himself was the only one who was able to sense Zhun Xiaoyao's condition. Your physical body. Long Haotian's eyes were filled with shock. His hand landed on Zhun Xiaoyao's chest, and he felt as if he had hit a piece of primordial divine gold. Not only was he unable to shake Zhun Xiaoyaro in the slightest, but his palm was also hurting from the impact. One Long Haotian was Dragon. The Dragon clan's Dragon's body was Dragon of God. However, Zhun Xiaoyaro was standing there and letting him hit him. How was it possible that he couldn't even hurt him? That's it. Zhun Xiaoyaro tilted his head slightly. Although he did not seem to say a word of humiliation. It made Long Haotian's face flush red, anger rising in his heart. What's the matter with you? Could it be that you can't put down your face and forcefully suppress your internal injuries? This was the only possibility that Long Haotian could think of. You're thinking too much. Zhun Xiaoyao's eyes glinted with a cold light as soon as he finished speaking. He reached out and directly grabbed Long Haotian's arm that hit his chest. The 40,000 granules of the giant elephant in his body erupted at the same time. In an instant, 400 million kilograms of force surged out. Rip! Zhun Xiaoyaro twisted his wrist and pulled fiercely. Accompanied by a scream, Long Haotian's arm was torn off by Zhun Xiaoyaro. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. Long Haotian's figure retreated rapidly, clutching the gap of his broken arm. His face was pale and full of disbelief. Not just Long Haotian, all the guests were speechless. This kind of reversal was something that no one had expected. Zhun Xiaoyaro not only took a hit from Long Haotian's severing dragon hand, but he also tore off Long Haotian's arm in an extremely violent manner. Who would have thought? The Son of God of the Zhun family is breathing steadily. He does not seem to be injured, the old Taoist of the Daoji heavenly sect, said. Hearing his words, many forces came to a realization. They immediately looked at Zhun Xiaoyao as if they were looking at a monster. After all, in the entire Huangtian mystic realm, there were only a few geniuses who could take a hit from Zulong's severing dragon hand. Most importantly, Zhun Xiaoyao did not take the hit or suffer any injuries. He was completely fine. The sacred body of the ancients. Even if it is confined by heaven and earth, it is still terrifying. Many young geniuses were shocked. Son of God. Zhun Shuahuang also breathed a sigh of relief. She looked at Zhun Xiaoyao with gratitude in her eyes. You can leave now. Leave this loach to me, Zhun Xiaoyao said lightly. Yes. Zhun Shuahuang nodded respectfully. At this moment, she no longer seemed to be the high and mighty sequence 7 of the Zhun family. She was more like Zhun Xiaoyao's maid. Long Haotian's face turned pale when he heard Zhun Xiaoyao's words. He covered the gap of his broken arm with fear in his eyes. If he were to still underestimate Zhun Xiaoyao at this point, then he would truly be a fool. Zhun Xiaoyao shook his head lightly. There was a faint green light under his skin. Zhun Xiaoyao absorbed and refined Xiao Chen's dragon qi, which allowed him to condense the dragon scale inner armor in his body. Zhun Xiaoyao was able to block Long Haotian's severing dragon hand without getting hurt because of his already powerful sacred body of the ancients. He didn't even bother to use the underworld protection of the divine elephant overpowering force. Zhun Xiaoyao, I don't know what you used to block this move, but you are too naive if you think you can win just like that. Long Haotian said coldly. A vigorous stream of qi and blood suddenly gushed out from his body. Then, under the stunned gaze of everyone, the flesh at the gap of his broken arm began to squirm, and then a new arm slowly grew out. Is that even possible? Some young geniuses were tongue-tied. Is Long Haotian immortal? No, even if the dragon clan is full of qi and blood, they can't just sit there and regrow a broken arm. At least, Long Haotian can't do that. I understand now. Rumor has it that Long Haotian has fused with a dragon essence. Could it be because of the dragon essence? Now, everyone understood that Long Haotian was using the dragon essence. Oh, dragon essence. A light flashed in Zhun Xiaoyao's eyes. He looked at Long Haotian like a hunter staring at his prey. Courting death. Seeing Zhun Xiaoyao's look, Long Haotian was enraged. It had always been him who treated humans as prey. Since when did a human treat him as prey? Boom. Long Haotian punched out, his qi and blood surging. Everyone seemed to hear a dragon's roar. A colossal dragon phantom, coiling around Long Haotian's fistlight, shattered the void, and blasted toward Zhun Xiaoyao. That kind of powerful fluctuation was like a true dragon coming into being, fighting in the sky. This was another great divine ability of Zulong, as famous as the severing dragon hand, called Dragon Fist. As expected of the dragon son of Zulong, his strength is astonishing. The moment Long Haotian made his move, many of the younger generation were stunned. Although they couldn't stand Long Haotian's arrogance, his strength was indeed speechless. Seeing the situation, the corners of Zhun Xiaoyao's lips curled into a cold smile. He reached his hand out, forming hand seals. Golden divine power surged. Behind him, there seemed to be an indomitable and majestic figure appearing. That is, many guests' pupils constricted in unison when they saw the situation. That kind of vast power made their hair stand on end and their hair stand on end. Full edition. Chapter 36. Zhun Xiaoyao reached out his hand and formed a seal. Behind him, a towering figure stood between heaven and earth, like an emperor who suppressed the world. That's the Zhun family's martial arts, the seal of the human ruler, an old man exclaimed. As a clan of the ancients, the Zhun family had been passed down for countless years. They had a shocking foundation and all kinds of martial arts, cultivation methods, and secret techniques. It was only natural that Zhun Xiaoyao had been training in more than just the combatant formula over the years. The seal of the human ruler was one of the top martial arts techniques that Zhun Xiaoyao had cultivated. With his monstrous talent and comprehension ability, it was naturally easy for him to cultivate it. Very quickly, he succeeded. At that moment, Zhun Xiaoyao used the seal of the human ruler. Heaven and earth were intimidated by the seal. The shadow of the human ruler behind him seemed to have the power to suppress the sun, moon, and sky. With the seal of the human ruler, Jun Xiaoyaro was like a banished immortal. The seal suppressed the sky and overturned the sun and moon. Long Haotian also performed the dragon fist. His fist light was shocking and illuminated the sky, accompanied by the shadow of a dragon. Boom! The two of them collided like two big stars colliding, and like meteors collapsing on each other. The void trembled, and magical power fluctuations spread in all directions like ripples. Jun Zhantian saw this and reached out his hand. The surrounding void seemed to have been imprisoned, turning into a prison of heaven and earth, isolating the fluctuations. Almighty Saint Stage. None of the elders of the Jun family are weak. Some of the elders of the forces were shocked. Those who had reached the Saint Stage were called Almighty. Generally, a force with one Almighty Saint Stage cultivator could become a first-class force. No one knew how many elders there were in each branch of the Jun family. Perhaps even the Jun family did not know. On the other side, the violent magical power fluctuations were restrained and kept rolling in the void. Everyone's eyes were focused on it. Cough, cough. The sound of coughing blood was heard, and a figure staggered out. It was Long Haotian. At that moment, his eyes were wide open and filled with disbelief. The arm that he used to punch was cracked, and blood kept flowing out. His whole arm was trembling. In the collision just now, Jun Xiaoyaro had almost crippled his arm again. Even if Long Haotian possessed dragon essence, it was also impossible to endlessly regrow severed limbs. Your strength. Long Haotian gritted his teeth as his heart sank. He had completely underestimated the 10-year-old son of God of the Jun family. One of Jun Xiaoyao's hands was still in the state of forming a seal, while the other hand was behind his back. His clothes were whiter than snow, and his temperament was transcendent. He was like a true immortal who had not fallen into the mortal world. His aura was leisurely. It didn't look like it had experienced a great battle at all. It was incomparably sacred. He's so handsome. Jiang Luoli drooled as she looked at him. In her eyes, Jun Xiaoyaro was like a god, okay? She wasn't the only one. The eyes of many princesses and prides from other forces were also shining. With a raise of his hand, he suppressed Zulong Longzi. In the younger generation of the world, how many people could have such a graceful bearing? Long Haotian's expression was unprecedentedly ugly. He had come this time to trample Jun Xiaoyaro under his feet and use this opportunity to show off the might of Zulong. But now, he had failed to show off and was beaten instead. No matter what, I can't lose today. Long Haotian took a deep breath. A terrifying force slowly emitted from his body. As this force spread, Long Haotian's cultivation realm actually broke through from the true spirit realm to a new realm. Celestial Bridge Realm. Cultivators who reached this realm would build a celestial bridge in their bodies. It would allow the spirit sea in their dantian to connect with the celestial palace in their mind. Their strength was obviously much stronger than that of a true spirit realm cultivator. I originally wanted to build a good foundation before breaking through. Jun Xiaoyao, it's all because of you. Long Haotian's aura soared. His expression was frightening, and his gaze was as sharp as a sword. With the help of the dragon essence, he had officially stepped into the celestial bridge realm. Originally, Long Haotian had planned to return to Zulong to break through in peace after this battle. But now, because of Jun Xiaoyaro, he had broken through in advance. Because if he did not break through, he would not be able to defeat Jun Xiaoyaro. This way, Long Haotian's realm would be somewhat unstable, which would not be beneficial to his cultivation. One could only imagine just how much hatred Long Haotian harbored toward Jun Xiaoyaro at the moment. Originally, he only wanted to suppress Jun Xiaoyaro. Now, he even had the intention to kill Jun Xiaoyaro. True Dragon Heaven Imprisonment Technique. Long Haotian's aura was majestic, like a true dragon breaking free from its shackles. In his body, there seemed to be a blazing core that appeared, emitting a majestic force. It's the dragon essence. Not only did Long Haotian break through to the celestial bridge realm, he even activated the power of the dragon essence. Not only that, could that move of his be an attack evolved from the true dragon superpower? Feeling Long Haotian's aura, many young geniuses from the major forces felt a chill run down their spines. If they were facing the current Long Haotian, just his aura alone would be able to suppress them, let alone fight. The True Dragon Heaven imprisonment technique should be an attack evolved from the True Dragon's superpower. It's too terrifying, not to mention the young geniuses, even some of the older generation felt a chill run down their spines. The True Dragon's superpower was Zulong's supreme technique. It was definitely one of the top superpowers in the Huangtian mystic realm. Although what Long Haotian displayed was not the True Dragon's superpower, it was still a secondary superpower that was born from the True Dragon's superpower. It was also very powerful. Roar! The shadow of a true dragon wrapped around Long Haotian, then rose into the air. Its scales were thick, and its dragon horns were sharp. It raised its huge dragon claws and came crashing down on Jun Xiaoyao. Wherever the dragon claws passed, the space vibrated like ripples. Too powerful. Some of the geniuses from the major forces felt their teeth chattering, as if a basin of cold water had been poured over them from head to toe. Long Haotian, the dragon son of Zulong, was practically invincible at this moment. Son of God. Jun Zhanjian and Jun Shuahuang both looked nervous. At this moment, Long Haotian's attack made them feel a sense of danger. Brother Xiaoyao. Jiang Luoli could not help but feel nervous as well. Jiang Shengyi's beautiful eyes were also filled with worry, as was Jiang Ru. Even Jun Zhantian, who knew Jun Xiaoyao's strength best, clenched his fists and was fully prepared. If there was even the slightest accident, he would immediately make a move. The reputation of the Jun family was not as important as Jun Xiaoyao's life. Jun Xiaoyao, die. Long Haotian's face was ferocious, as if he could already see Jun Xiaoyao's blood. This is interesting. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was calm. Even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, his expression would not change. Just as he was about to activate his divine body vision to fight, the mechanical voice of the system suddenly rang in his mind. Ding! You are already at the 10-years-old banquet. Would the host like to sign in? Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I thought the system was malfunctioning, but it's just in time. It's better to be early than early. Sign in. Jun Xiaoyao said in his mind. He wanted to see what good things he could sign in this time. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the 7-star reward, the Bone of Supremacy. As the system's voice fell, Jun Xiaoyao's chest suddenly glowed, and an earth-shattering and terrifying aura burst out. Full edition. Chapter 37. Within Jun Xiaoyao's chest, there was an extremely terrifying energy gathering, as if it was a blazing sun. A crystalline bone with countless complicated runes intertwined with one another was born from it. The Bone of Supremacy. Among the 3,000 physiques, it was also a terrifying physique that was ranked in the top 30. The so-called 3,000 physiques were not only the imperial physique, the divine physique, and the sacred physique. For example, the Bone of Supremacy, the Polychoria, the innate Taoist fetus, the heart of 7 orifices Linglong, and so on could all be considered as special physiques. As for the Bone of Supremacy, it was obvious that it was extremely extraordinary. Among the 3,000 physiques, it was ranked in the top 30, which was an extremely high ranking. It could be said that even if Jun Xiaoyao did not have the sacred body of the ancients, the Bone of Supremacy alone was enough for him to stand at the top of the heavens' favorites and dominate the world. A 7-star reward. It seems that my luck is not bad. Jun Xiaoyao smiled faintly. Jun Xiaoyao's change also attracted the attention of everyone present. What's going on? The son of God of the Jun family's chest is shining. What a terrifying aura. It feels like I'm facing a supremacy. I'm about to kneel down. A young genius's face was pale, and his legs were trembling. At this moment, a blazing light erupted from Jun Xiaoyao's chest, and all kinds of runes were imprinted in the void. The aura was as if they were facing a supremacy, and it was daunting. Many young geniuses could not bear the terrifying aura and directly knelt down on the spot. Could that be the Bone of Supremacy? The old Daoist of the Daoji heavenly sect could not help but exclaim, and his old eyes were as big as copper bells. He had been cultivating for many years, and his temperament was stable, but at this moment, he could not help but lose his composure and exclaim. In addition to the sacred body of the ancients, the son of God of the Jun family also had a bone of supremacy in his chest. This was so terrifying that they could not believe their eyes. The sacred body of the ancients and the bone of supremacy. Any one of these talents was enough to allow one to stand at the top of the heavens' favorites. Now, the son of God of the Jun family actually had 2 top talents. Who would dare to believe this? Xiaoyaro actually has the bone of supremacy. Not to mention the outsiders, even Jun Zhantian, Jiang Ru, and the other relatives were dumbfounded. Even they didn't know that Jun Xiaoyaro possessed the bone of supremacy, let alone outsiders. Bones of supremacy? How is that possible? Long Haotian, who was fighting Jun Xiaoyaro, felt the shocking aura erupting from Jun Xiaoyao's chest, and his dragon eyes widened. He could not believe it. In the past, Lan Qingya had never told him that Jun Xiaoyaro had a bone of supremacy. It was worth noting that the bones of supremacy were different from the sacred body of the ancients. The sacred body of the ancients was known as a useless body in modern times. However, the bone of supremacy was still one of the top physiques. With just a piece of bone, he could create an invincible young supreme being. So what if you have the supreme being bone? I'll just kill you. Long Haotian hardened his heart and decided to kill Jun Xiaoyaro. As for his escape route, he was not stupid enough to provoke the Jun family alone. There would be someone behind him who would protect him. As long as he could kill Jun Xiaoyaro, everything would be worth it. Thinking of this, Long Haotian activated the power of the dragon essence in his body and poured it all into the true dragon heaven imprisonment technique. The lifelike true dragon's claws tore through the air and pressed down on Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro stood still with a faint smile on his lips. He changed his mind and stopped using the power of the sacred body of the ancients. I'd like to try the power of this bone of supremacy, Jun Xiaoyaro murmured. He activated the golden spirit sea in his body, and the magical power surged into the bone of supremacy in his chest. In an instant, divine light shone brightly and brilliantly. It was as if a sun had appeared in Jun Xiaoyao's chest. The dazzling divine light illuminated the void, shaking the 9 heavens and shattering the clouds in the sky. All the geniuses were shocked and couldn't help but tremble, almost falling to their knees. Even some of the older generation experts felt their hearts skip a beat. At this moment, Jun Xiaoyaro, who had used the bone of supremacy, was like an ancient true immortal descending and baptizing the world with divine light. This dazzling divine light was the first terrifying great magical power contained in the bone of supremacy. The light of tribulation. It was as if the heavens had sent down a divine tribulation to destroy the world with divine light. This kind of divine ability was too terrifying. It caused many guests to shiver, and they could feel their souls trembling. Many geniuses had lost any intention of comparing with it just by looking at it. There was no comparison at all. When Long Haotian felt this power, his face was also overwhelmed with shock, mixed with endless shock. Boom! The 2 ultimate techniques collided, and the true dragon heaven imprisonment technique and the light of tribulation fell together. There was no suspense. The terrifying light of tribulation, which seemed to be able to penetrate everything, directly destroyed the true dragon's shadow and swept towards Long Haotian. No. Long Haotian was shocked. He activated the dragon essence with all his might, and a layer of light golden scales spread out on the surface of his body. At the same time, he hurriedly dodged. But how could he dodge the speed of light? Puff! Long Haotian only dodged half a step before the light of tribulation hit him. Half of his body, together with one of his arms, was directly cut open. Dragon blood flowed out and splashed into the sky. Ah! Long Haotian's eyes were blood-red as he howled at the sky. When had he ever experienced such pain? As the dragon son of Zulong, he had always been the one to torture and kill others. No one could threaten him. But now, half of Long Haotian's body was cut open. Even if he had the dragon essence, he would not be able to recover in a short time. He looked at Jun Xiaoyaro with a look of horror. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were still indifferent. He activated the divine elephant overpowering force, and the demon wings extended from his back. With a flap of his wings, he landed beside Long Haotian in an instant. He grabbed Long Haotian's remaining arm with one hand and pulled it hard again. Blood splattered, accompanied by Long Haotian's roar. Seeing this scene, the crowd fell silent. The son of God of the Jun family tore apart the dragon son of Zulong with his bare hands. This was not a metaphor, but a real tearing with his bare hands. Before, there was the white-robed divine king, Jun Wuhui, who pulled out the Zulong Quasi-Supreme's dragon tendons and skinned him. After that, there was the son of God of the Jun family, Jun Xiaoyao, who tore apart the dragon son of Zulong with his bare hands. Is this a skill passed down from his ancestors? Some of the older generation figures were dumbfounded as they watched. Were the people of the Jun family all dragon-slaying warriors? Like father, like son. The son of God of the Jun family has lived up to his father's name. Many cultivators sighed in their hearts. The only remaining proud daughter of the Feathermen tribe looked pale as if she had lost her soul. Her legs trembled as she watched. At this moment, Jun Xiaoyao stared at Long Haotian as if he was staring at meat on a chopping board. Sensing Jun Xiaoyao's dangerous gaze, Long Haotian's face turned pale. He frantically retreated and shouted, "Jun Xiaoyao, how dare you? Why wouldn't I, the son of God, dare?" Jun Xiaoyao smiled. As he reached out his hand, golden magical power surged like a tide and slapped toward Long Haotian. The son of God of the Jun family is going to kill him. Everyone gasped in unison. They did not expect Jun Xiaoyao to really want to kill Long Haotian. He was the dragon son of Zulong and the younger brother of Long Haotian, the first generation of the Zulong taboo. If Long Haotian was killed, it would set off a huge wave that would shake the entire Huangtian mystic realm. However, they still underestimated Jun Xiaoyao's means. Not only did Jun Xiaoyao want to kill Long Haotian, but he also wanted to extract the dragon essence from his body. Just as Jun Xiaoyao was about to make his move, a majestic and powerful voice with a cold tone sounded from the sky in the distance. "Junior of the Jun family, how dare you?" Full text. Chapter 38. That voice caused the universe to tremble and the world to tremble. A terrifying dragon aura came crashing down, under the astonished gazes of all the people from the various forces. A gigantic pitch-black dragon claw with bulging muscles pressed down from the heavens. The dark black scales glittered with a cold light. A claw swiped down, tearing a crack in the void. The fluctuations were so terrifying that it made one's heart tremble. "That aura, it's at least a quasi-supreme," some of the older generation exclaimed. Supremes were already at the peak of the immortal realm. And quasi-supremes were the strongest below supremes. Even in some imperishable orthodoxies, quasi-supreme beings were definitely top-notch figures, and could be said to be existences with deep foundations. Yet now, there was actually a half-supreme being who appeared, leaving everyone horrified. No wonder Long Haotian can be so fearless. He has someone backing him. Of course he's not afraid. Some people understood. No matter how arrogant Long Haotian was, he wouldn't come to the Jun family alone. Just like how the Jun family's prodigy wouldn't be stupid enough to provoke the Zulong alone. Long Haotian had someone backing him. Great, Elder Yu Long has made a move. Long Haotian revealed a smile of relief. As long as he was alive, he would have a chance to rise again. He might have a chance to wash away today's shame in the future. What? Could it be the Zulong's supremacy Yu Long? Hearing Long Haotian's words, some of the older cultivators were shocked. Supremacy Yu Long was an extremely powerful quasi-supremacy in the Zulong. His true form was a black dragon. He had once fought against a supremacy of the human race with his quasi-supremacy cultivation, and his fame spread throughout the 3,000 mystical prefectures of the immortal realm. But later on, he hid in the Zulong and didn't come out. Now that he reappeared in the world, his aura was still shocking. "Junior of the Jun family, don't be so ruthless. Let's stop here." Supremacy Yu Long's tone was cold and arrogant. It was Long Haotian who started the trouble first. He came to the Jun family and tried to step on Jun Xiaoyao to make a name for himself. But now, Supremacy Yu Long just wanted to let it go. Of course, the only thing Supreme Nether Dragon could do now was take Long Haotian away. Trying to kill Jun Xiaoyao in the Jun family's residence was no different from a fantasy story. Even if the real Supreme Zulong was here, he wouldn't be able to kill Jun Xiaoyaro in the Jun family's territory. Hearing Nether Dragon Sovereign's words, Long Haotian finally heaved a sigh of relief. However, the way he looked at Jun Xiaoyaro was filled with cold resentment. This was the first time in his life that he had lost so miserably. In the end, he even needed the seniors of the clan to put aside their pride to save him. It could be said that Long Haotian had never suffered such humiliation before. One could only imagine how much he hated Jun Xiaoyaro. Looking at Long Haotian's expression, Jun Xiaoyao's lips curled into a sneer. What? Are you also going to say that the river flows east for 30 years and the river flows west for 30 years? Humph, my elder brother, Long Haotian, will let you taste a crushing defeat, Long Haotian said with a sinister tone. He didn't dare to say anything about taking revenge himself. After all, the sacred body of the ancients combined with the bones of supremacy was too powerful. It wasn't something he could deal with. Unfortunately, no matter what, you won't be able to see it. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled. Under Long Haotian's shocked gaze, he continued to suppress him with one hand. Jun Xiaoyao, are you crazy? How dare you attack me? Long Haotian's expression changed as he quickly retreated. How dare you? In the sky, Nether Dragon Sovereign's thunderous voice shook the 9 heavens and 10 earths. He, a quasi-supreme, had personally spoken, but Jun Xiaoyao actually turned a blind eye to it. Rumble. A huge dragon claw directly descended from the sky. In the void, many runes flashed. It was the Jun family's defensive array that sensed the fluctuation of magical power and automatically activated. Every ray of light was enough to kill a saint. However, now, it couldn't stop the dragon claw from descending from the sky. Wherever the dragon claw passed, many runes and arrays exploded. Nether Dragon Sovereign made a move. He didn't want to deal with Jun Xiaoyao, but he wanted to take Long Haotian away. Bang! 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 The pitch-black dragon claw tore through the void, and the array runes directly exploded. The power of a quasi-supreme was so powerful. Is the Jun family not reacting at all? Feeling this terrifying power, many people hurriedly scattered. At the same time, they looked at Jun Zhantian and the other elders of the family. Zulong, a quasi-supreme, had already made a move. How could they still be so calm? Some of the more observant people noticed that the corners of Jun Zhantian and the other elders' mouths were curled up in a cold and mocking smile. The powerful quasi-supreme's power pressed down and concentrated on Jun Xiaoyao. If it were an ordinary young genius, they would have been suppressed by this power and be unable to move. However, Jun Xiaoyao turned a blind eye and continued to attack. He grabbed at the void, and the spear of the underworld formed. He directly threw it at the escaping Long Haotian and pierced through his chest. Then, he used the extreme speed of the demon wings and slapped at Long Haotian with lightning speed. Crack! A series of bone-cracking sounds rang out, making one's teeth ache. Long Haotian violently vomited blood. All the bones in his body were shattered, and he fell to the ground, dying. In the end, Jun Xiaoyao directly stomped down from the sky. His foot, strengthened by 40,000 granules of the giant elephant, directly stomped on Long Haotian's chest. Splat! A large mouthful of blood mixed with broken organs was spat out from Long Haotian's mouth. Even if he had the physical body of a dragon, he couldn't withstand such a huge force. Long Haotian's eyes bulged. His face was filled with anger, shock, unwillingness, and a faint sense of regret. Brother, won't let you go. Long Haotian's eyes widened, and his words were unclear. Finally, he breathed his last and died with his eyes wide open. Zulong's dragon's son had fallen, and all of this happened in the blink of an eye. Even Supreme Nether Dragon didn't expect Jun Xiaoyao to act so decisively. Damn it! An angry roar shook the 9 heavens and 10 land. Supreme Nether Dragon was furious. A majestic pressure came crashing down like a tidal wave. The ground began to crack, and some of the guests who were affected were directly pressed to the ground. On the other hand, Jun Xiaoyao stood with his hands behind his back. His handsome face was as calm as an ancient well. It was as if the person he was facing wasn't a quasi-supreme whose strength was unparalleled in the world, but an ordinary person. It was also at this moment that a cold snort sounded from the depths of the Jun residence. Since when did a mere quasi-supreme dare to be so impudent in my Jun residence? As the voice fell, a majestic and resplendent sword aura broke through the air from the depths of the Jun residence. The sword aura sparkled, as if reflecting the terrifying scene of a group of immortals falling. A pitch-black crack directly appeared in the void. The pitch-black spatial turbulence accompanied the roar of the sword aura. Supreme Nether Dragon let out an angry roar as the sword swept past. A huge dragon arm, accompanied by dragon blood, fell from the depths of the firmament. One sword had cut off one of Supreme Nether Dragon's dragon arms. Everyone's scalps were about to explode. The power of that sword aura was as if it could destroy the heavens. It's the Jun family's immortal slaying sword art, one of the 5 great divine arts. The one who attacked is the Jun family's 18th ancestor, someone exclaimed. Jun family's 18th ancestor, just you wait. Supreme Nether Dragon's voice was cold and harsh. Since you're here, then stay, the 18th ancestor's voice sounded again. Immediately, 2 sword auras from the immortal slaying sword art slashed through the air from the depths of the Jun residence. No, don't tell me you want to start an immortal war between the Zulong and the Jun family. Supreme Nether Dragon's voice was filled with unprecedented fear. If the 2 immortal forces really started an immortal war, the entire Huangtian mystic realm would fall into unprecedented turmoil. So what if it's an immortal war? The Jun family has stood tall in the mystic realm for countless years. When have we ever feared anyone? The 18th ancestor's tone was boundlessly domineering. Above the firmament, 2 sword auras swept across in succession. A rain of blood poured down, pouring down in torrents. Heaven and earth cried, and the universe shook. A massive black dragon's corpse fell from the distant sky like a fallen god. The 18th ancestor of the Jun family had killed a quasi-supreme Zulong in 3 moves. The entire book. Chapter 39. The world was dead silent, and everyone was speechless. Hundreds and thousands of forces came to attend Jun Xiaoyao's 10-years-old banquet. At this moment, the people of these forces had witnessed the fall of a quasi-supreme from the lair of Zulong with their own eyes. Moreover, the one who fell was not a nameless quasi-supreme, but an existence who could compete with the supreme beings of the human race. However, such a powerful existence was killed by the Jun family's 18th ancestor in 3 moves. What did that mean? A quasi-supreme could be regarded as the foundation of an immortal orthodoxy. They could even create a top orthodoxy on their own. However, such an existence was killed by the 18th ancestor in 3 moves like a dog. The Jun family's 18th ancestor should not be an ordinary supreme being, right? A young genius swallowed hard and said. Rumor has it that the most mysterious place in the Jun family is the ancestral temple. No one knows how many old antiques are buried there, some old people who knew a little about the Jun family said in a deep voice. The Jun family had stood in the mystic realm for countless years and was extremely glorious. Its foundation was simply unimaginable. Any one of the great ancestors buried in the ancestral temple could make the mystic realm tremble with a stomp of their feet. Not to mention, there were rumors that the Jun family might have great emperors. In the late ancient era, the last great emperor came from the Jun family. Qitian the great emperor, Jun Qitian, was a supreme existence who abandoned the heavens. Some old people whispered to each other, their words full of reverence. There was a reason why the Jun family could shine in the mystic realm for countless eras. There was a rain of blood falling from the sky, as if all living beings were singing a sad song. The fall of a quasi-supreme was enough to trigger a vision of heaven and earth. Xiaoyao, come and see me after the banquet. The 18th ancestor's voice came from the depths of the Jun family's residence. Yes. Jun Xiaoyao cupped his hands in the air. To be honest, the 18th ancestor's methods also amazed Jun Xiaoyao. In particular, the Immortal Slayer sword chant, which was named after the Immortal Slayer, was extremely powerful. Even Jun Xiaoyao was a little envious. This kind of top-level martial art was not even found in the Jun family's martial pavilion. Jun Xiaoyao wondered if he should ask the 18th ancestor for the impartation of the immortal slaying sword chant. The Archean royalty who had come to provoke the Jun family had almost been completely annihilated. From quasi-sovereign Yulong to the prides of the ancient royal families. Oh, right, I forgot one more. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his eyebrows slightly as he looked at the genius of the Featherman tribe who was trembling on the ground. Previously, she was almost killed by Jun Xuehuang. In the end, it was Long Haotian who intervened, allowing her to luckily survive. However, upon seeing such a scene, this Featherman clan's proud daughter felt as if her liver and guts were about to shatter. She was so scared that she pissed her pants and her lower body became wet. She had previously thought that the son of God of the Jun family would not be a match for Long Haotian. But now, the scene of Jun Xiaoyaro tearing Long Haotian apart with his bare hands replayed in her mind like a nightmare. You should go with them. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were indifferent. No, no, please spare my life, son of God of the Jun family. I am willing to be your slave and serve you for the rest of my life, Lord Son of God. The Featherman clan's proud daughter kept kowtowing and crying. It had to be said that some women of the ancient royal families or the demon race did indeed have charm that human women did not have. For example, Yuzhu had a pair of snow-white wings on her back. Her skin was crystal clear, and her appearance was beautiful. Even if she were to be auctioned, she would be able to fetch a sky-high price. Jun Xiaoyaro said coldly, "Are you worthy of being my slave?" Even the princess of the ancient kingdom of Phoenix, Bai Yu was only his slave. What right did a mere genius of the Featherman clan have to be his slave? Jun Xiaoyaro slammed his palm down. No. Yuzhu screamed. She did not expect that in Jun Xiaoyao's eyes, she was not even qualified to be a slave. Fat. The last proud daughter of the ancient royal family also died. Seeing how merciless Jun Xiaoyaro was, some of the guests wiped the sweat off their foreheads. The Jun family was a group of ruthless people, however, even more ruthless was yet to come. Jun Zhantian and a few other clan elders directly carried the body of Quasi-Supreme Yulong over. They refined it with the elemental fire on the spot and began to roast the black dragon meat. Everyone was stunned. Everyone's faces were filled with astonishment. They were a little dumbfounded. Zulong's Quasi-Supreme Yulong was going to roast meat. Humans could eat anything as long as it was not in the shape of a human. However, this was Zulong's Quasi-Supreme Yulong's flesh. Who would dare to eat it? Even if it was placed in front of these people, they would not dare to touch it. If Zulong held a grudge against them, he would flatten them in a matter of minutes. After all, they were not the families of the ancients like the Jun family, the Jiang family, or the Yi family. They could not bear Zulong's anger. Everyone, please do as you please. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled faintly. He did not think that there was anything wrong with this. Wow, 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 we can eat dragon meat now. Jiang Luoli cried out excitedly. Although she was the apple of the Jiang family's eye, it was impossible for her to casually eat dragon meat, let alone the meat of a quasi-supreme level dragon. Moreover, she had the Jiang family behind her, so she was not afraid of Zulong's revenge. Jun Xiaoyaro would eat it too, but before that, he had something to take care of. He walked to Long Haotian's body and raised his hand. Vast golden dharmic power surged out and began to extract the dragon essence from Long Haotian's body. Generally speaking, once the dragon essence was completely refined, it would be impossible to extract it. However, Long Haotian had not completely digested the dragon essence, so it could still be extracted. A moment later, a ball of golden dragon essence was extracted. There seemed to be a mini dragon within it, roaring at Jun Xiaoyao. Do you think a mere dragon essence can stump the Son of God? Jun Xiaoyao's lips curled into a cold smile. He raised his hand and activated the strength of the hell-crushing god mammoth again. This time, it was different. A pitch-black furnace appeared above his head, carrying a terrifying aura that could refine all things in the world. What is the Son of God of the Jun family using? Why do I feel like my soul is being sucked into that furnace? The group of young geniuses trembled in fear. Jun Xiaoyaro had made progress in the strength of the hell-crushing god mammoth during his year of seclusion. His strongest attack was the spear of the underworld. His strongest defense was the underworld protection. His strongest speed was the wings of the devil. Now, Jun Xiaoyaro was using the fourth transformation of the strength of the hell-crushing god mammoth. His strongest refinement was the hellfire furnace. The hellfire furnace could refine all things. Whether it was used to fight enemies or to refine treasures of heaven and earth, it was very practical. The dragon essence was sucked into the hellfire furnace without any resistance and began to be forcibly refined. A dragon essence was condensed from the essence of a dragon's flesh and blood throughout his life and the magical runes. Even Long Haotian was barely able to refine it and did not completely integrate it. Now, Jun Xiaoyaro was able to refine it without any difficulty, and it was impossible for his body to explode. There was no energy that could make the body of the sacred body of the ancients explode. The moment Jun Xiaoyaro refined the dragon essence, his aura rose uncontrollably again. Rumble. Tribulation clouds began to gather in the sky, and thunder rumbled. Is the son of God of the Jun family going to make another breakthrough? The Complete Book. Chapter 40. Jun Xiaoyaro was only 10 years old, but he was already at level 9 of the true spirit realm, which was enough to shock everyone. However, seeing Jun Xiaoyao's aura skyrocketing again, everyone present was dumbfounded. They were all dumbfounded. Is he going to break through again? This is bad. Could it be the tribulation of the sacred body of the ancients? Jun Zhantian looked up at the dark clouds in the sky and frowned. Ordinary cultivators would not face any tribulation if they broke through from the true spirit realm to the celestial bridge realm. But the sacred body of the ancients was different. This kind of body constitution was not tolerated by heaven and earth, except for the 10 natural restrictions. Every time the sacred body of the ancients made a big breakthrough, heaven would punish it. And from the true spirit realm to the celestial bridge realm was a big leap. Seeing this, Jun Zhantian was not the only one who noticed it. The other guests also noticed it. Could that be the tribulation of the sacred body of the ancients? That's right. Rumor has it that the sacred body of the ancients will face a tribulation when it breaks through a realm. The son of God of the Jun family is in trouble now. For cultivators, the tribulation was the most dreaded thing. If they were not careful, they would die, and their success or failure would be gone. For a body constitution like the sacred body of the ancients, the tribulation it attracted was even stronger than the ordinary ones. Ordinary geniuses might not even be able to withstand a single attack. Xiaoyao, don't worry. Grandpa and the others will protect you. Jun Zhantian and a group of elders stood up, exuding the aura of the saint stage. In the past, there were many forces that wanted to cultivate the sacred body of the ancients. Every time the sacred body of the ancients went through a tribulation, there would be a group of strong cultivators to protect it and help it through the tribulation. However, Jun Xiaoyao's handsome face was as calm as still water, and his eyes were unperturbed. Grandpa, there's no need. It's just a tribulation. It's not worth mentioning. Let me handle it alone. Hearing Jun Xiaoyao's words, Jun Zhantian and the others were stunned. The expressions of the surrounding cultivators all froze. At this moment, the tribulation finally turned into a torrent of lightning and fell. That terrifying tribulation might was horrifying. Jun Xiaoyaro stood in midair. His black hair flowed with divine radiance and fluttered in the wind. His clothes were as white as snow, and his sleeves fluttered in the wind. He looked like an immortal who was about to leave with the wind. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand, and the hellfire crucible appeared once more. The torrent of lightning crashed into the hellfire crucible. Jun Xiaoyaro shuddered all of a sudden. Boundless golden qi and blood rose from within his body as the silhouette of a golden primordial divine elephant suddenly appeared. It carried with it a vast might that could suppress the universe. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his trunk to the sky and inhaled. Rolling thunderbolts surged into his body. 100,000 lightning tribulations, forge my immortal saint body. Not only was Jun Xiaoyaro not afraid of the thunder tribulation, but he also used it as a means to temper his sacred body of the ancients. Rumble. Lightning continued to fall, but it was unable to harm Jun Xiaoyaro. At most, it could only push him back. This is simply a monster. Many people from the various forces were speechless, unable to say a word. Every genius was trembling in fear when they went through the tribulation, fearing that they would die. Jun Xiaoyaro, on the other hand, was using the heavenly tribulation as a resource to temper his body. Sigh, it seems that I still underestimated Xiaoyaro. Jun Zhantian and the other elders shook their heads with bitter smiles. Sometimes, Jun Xiaoyao's talent made even the saints feel like their minds were about to collapse. If even they felt that way, one could only imagine how the young geniuses who came to the banquet felt. I feel like I'll never be able to catch up to the son of God of the Jun family. Yeah, this world of great battles seems to be the stage of the son of God of the Jun family. Some of the top geniuses of the major forces said so. Cracks began to appear in their minds. In the end, the thunder tribulation could do nothing to Jun Xiaoyaro. Disperse. Jun Xiaoyaro pushed his palm forward. The immemorial divine elephant's shadow roared into the sky. Lightning swept across the sky, and the dark tribulation clouds were scattered. Light finally returned to the world. Jun Xiaoyao's gains were also gratifying. First, his cultivation broke through to the celestial bridge stage. Not only that, but he also broke through to the late stage of the celestial bridge stage. The celestial bridge stage was divided into the early stage, the middle stage, the late stage, and the peak stage. After reaching the peak stage, the celestial bridge in the body was successfully built. Then, it was the consolidation stage, where the spirit and body merged and became one. After that, it was to find some Tao seeds, immortal seeds, and so on to integrate into one's body. After the consolidation stage, it was the nirvana stage, where one would find a fire seed to cleanse the divine palace in the brain and transform the true spirit into a primordial spirit. After the nirvana stage, one's strength would surge and reach the ascension stage. Finally, it was to ignite the divine fire and open the stairs to the saint stage. Celestial bridge, consolidation, convergence, nirvana, ascension stage, and divine fire. This was the middle stage of cultivation. After that, it would be the saint stage. Jun Xiaoyaro, who was only 10 years old, had reached the late stage of the celestial bridge stage. He was already an absolute monster. Usually, geniuses at his age would still be between the divinity stage and the true spirit stage. Previously, Long Haotian had only reached the celestial bridge stage with the help of the dragon essence. In addition to the stage, Jun Xiaoyaro used the power of the thunder tribulation and the dragon essence to awaken another 10,000 granules of the giant elephant in his body. In other words, Jun Xiaoyao's current physical strength had reached 500 million katis. This was simply terrifying. An ordinary genius's physical strength was only a few 100,000 katis at most. Even those top geniuses only had a few million or 10 million katis. Jun Xiaoyaro had 500 million katis of divine strength. In addition, Jun Xiaoyaro realized that the bone of supremacy in his chest was also absorbing the power of the heavenly tribulation and the dragon essence. It seems that the light of tribulation is not the complete form of this supernatural power. I have to find a way to nourish this bone in the future, Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. Like the sacred body of the ancients, the bone of supremacy had unlimited potential and would always be with Jun Xiaoyaro. However, at the same time, these two special constitutions required nourishment from all kinds of treasures. They were simply two bottomless pits. Fortunately, I was born in a clan of the ancients. If I was born in a small clan, I wouldn't even have enough resources, let alone cultivation. Jun Xiaoyaro couldn't help but sigh again. Reincarnation was really an art. Oh right, I forgot about the flesh of a quasi-supreme, Jun Xiaoyaro thought. Come, brother Xiaoyaro. Have some dragon meat. Jiang Luoli was intelligent and elegant. Light of wisdom flowed on her snow-white forehead. She was very intelligent and had been observing Jun Xiaoyaro. At this moment, she brought a plate of grilled dragon meat and handed it to Jun Xiaoyaro. She blinked her watery eyes and looked very obedient. Thank you. Jun Xiaoyaro nodded slightly. The way he ate was even more graceful than Jiang Luoli. He had to admit that the life essence of the quasi-supreme level dragon meat was amazing. The bone of supremacy in his chest was also desperately absorbing it. Jun Xiaoyaro was also looking forward to the day when the bone of supremacy would transform. Just the light of tribulation alone was already so powerful. If it transformed again, how powerful would his bone of supremacy be? After the 10-year-old banquet, there is still the supreme treasure of Yuan-Tian. It seems that I have to start preparing after that, Zhang Xiaoyaro thought to himself. The rewards of the check-ins were really rich. The sacred body of the ancients, the divine elephant overpowering force, and the bone of supremacy were all very helpful to him. Zhang Xiaoyaro was very curious. What rewards would he get for checking in at the supreme secret realm of Yuan-Tian? There's also Xiao Chen. I wonder if he's still worth it for me to harvest, Zhang Xiaoyaro thought. After the 10-year-old banquet, Zhang Xiaoyaro could finally enter the world and walk in the mystic realm. He was also looking forward to this vast and boundless mystic realm. I hope this world of great battles won't be too boring for me. Zhang Xiaoyaro stood with his hands behind his back and sighed to the sky. It was quite a feeling of invincibility and loneliness. The whole book. Chapter 41. Zhang Xiaoyao's 10-year-old banquet came to an end amidst all the ups and downs of the event. The shock and amazement on the faces of the clan leaders, elders, and young geniuses of the major forces had yet to subside when they left the Zhang residence. From their point of view, what they saw in the Zhang residence this time was simply shocking to the core. The son of God of the Zhang family, in particular, was like a young emperor with an invincible aura. Whether it was the kingly body of stars of the Yi family or the son of the dragon of Zulong, they were all like soft persimmons in his hands. Some of the young geniuses could not help but sigh in despair when they compared themselves to the son of God of the Zhang family. With the sacred body of the ancients and the bones of supremacy, Zhang Xiaoyao's talent could no longer be described as monstrous. He was simply born to be an emperor. With Zhang Xiaoyaro around, there was no place for anyone else in this life. Even some of the older generation sighed. With Zhang Xiaoyao's current rate of cultivation, he would surpass all of them in a few years' time. Of course, in addition to Zhang Xiaoyaro, Zhang Zhangjian and Zhang Shuahuang also performed well. They could easily kill the geniuses of the far ancient imperial family. The most shocking one was naturally the 18th ancestor of the Zhang family, who had never shown up from the beginning to the end. He was a grand ancestor who had been buried in the Zhang family's ancestral hall for countless years. The fact that he killed the quasi-supreme Zulong with 3 sword moves shocked everyone. Everyone knew that after this 10-year-old banquet, the Huangtian mystic realm, which had been peaceful for a long time, would be in turmoil. Not long after the Zhang family banquet ended. Far away in Hong State, in the headquarters of the Zulong, there was a long roar of a dragon that shook the world and shook the stars. All the creatures in Hong State seemed to have felt a vast power of heaven that could destroy the world. It's the supreme of the Zulong. Why is he angry? A creature of Hong State asked with a pale face. The news of the Zhang family banquet would not spread for a while, so they did not know about it. Inside the Zulong, many powerful telepathic wills were communicating. Calm down for now. What's the use of being so angry? Are you going to attack the Zhang family? That little bastard of the Zhang family dared to kill the dragon son of this lord's bloodline. And that Zhang Shiba, he dared to kill Yulong. Is he not afraid of me, Zulong? The furious voice from before said coldly. Zhang Shiba is a madman. It's too difficult to kill him. Should we tell proud heaven about this? Another Zulong expert asked via divine will. There's no need for that. Long Outian is currently in seclusion to refine the 5th dragon essence. Once he's done refining the 7th dragon essence and the blood of the emperor dragon, he'll be able to dominate the younger generation of the deity region. Even the son of God from the Zhang family can be easily killed. Alright, I will wait for the day when Ao Tian kills the son of God of the Zhang family. There's also the Zhang family. In the future, I will definitely make them pay with blood. On the other side, a divine bird was pulling a carriage through the void. Inside the carriage, a young man in a blue robe with dashing eyebrows and bright eyes slowly woke up. It was Yi Xingyun. Ouch! It hurts. Yi Xingyun felt as if his body was about to fall apart when he moved. His face was pale from the pain. Young master, you're awake, Uncle Fu said. What happened to me? Yi Xingyun was at a loss for a moment before he finally recalled everything that happened at the banquet. A strong sense of humiliation filled his heart. As the pride of the Yi family of the ancients, when had Yi Xingyun ever suffered such humiliation? not to mention being humiliated in front of his goddess. Jun Xiaoyao. Yi Xingyun gritted his teeth and clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Young master, the son of God of the Jun family is not to be trifled with. I've received news that the son of God not only has the sacred body of the ancients, but he was also born with a piece of the bone of supremacy. Even the dragon son of Zulong was easily killed by him, Uncle Fu said with a sigh. What? Is that true? Yi Xingyun was stunned. He couldn't believe his ears. Jun Xiaoyao was still holding back when he fought with him. He didn't even use the bone of supremacy. Yi Xingyun felt even more humiliated. Jun Xiaoyao didn't take him seriously at all. Damn it. Yi Xingyun was both angry and humiliated. Suddenly, a blurry memory flashed through his mind. He seemed to see a magnificent star palace and a magnificent figure with the sun, moon, and stars with his back facing him. What is that? Is it a dream? Or? Yi Xingyun muttered to himself. He knew that there were reincarnations of sages and even great emperors in this world. Those reincarnated sky prides were the real deal. Their vision and cultivation were far beyond that of ordinary sky prides. For example, the outlawed sky pride of the Yi family of the ancients, Yi Guchen, was rumored to be the reincarnation of the immemorial sword demon, Dugu Wubai. According to historical records, the sword demon once killed a boundary emperor with the Emperor Slayer sword. Could it be that I'm like Yi Guchen? That I'm the reincarnation of a supreme powerhouse and that the Star Palace is a treasure left behind for me? Yi Xingyun couldn't help but think to himself. This was very likely. As time passed, he would awaken more memories. By then, he might be able to find that Star Palace and inherit all of the supreme powerhouse's opportunities of fortune. Jun Xiaoyao, every dog has its day. Once I awaken my memories, I'll be able to rise to power. And Luo Li, I'll make you understand who's the best match for you. Yi Xingyun was reinvigorated. He felt that he was about to soar. Meanwhile, at the Jun residence. After the banquet, Jun Xiaoyao was being harassed by Jiang Luoli. Jiang Luoli was supposed to return to the Jiang residence, but she refused to leave. The girl that Yi Xingyun had been dreaming of getting his hands on had turned into a sticky plaster that Jun Xiaoyao couldn't shake off no matter how hard he tried. Brother Xiaoyao, do you need a maid to serve you tea? I have Linglong. Brother Xiaoyao, do you need a maid to wash your clothes and fold your blankets? I have Linglong. Brother Xiaoyao, do you need a maid to warm your bed? I have Linglong. What are you talking about? Jun Xiaoyao coughed dryly. He was annoyed beyond words. In the end, even Jiang Ru began to urge him to get married. Mother, the 18th ancestor is still looking for me. I'll take my leave first. Jun Xiaoyao could not stand the harassment and clamor of the group of women and immediately left. HMPH, Brother Xiaoyao, Luo Li won't give up. Jiang Luoli clenched her fists like a little fangirl. Meanwhile, Jun Xiaoyao had also arrived at the ancestral land in the deepest part of the Jun residence and saw the 18th ancestor. The 18th ancestor, who was dressed in a grey robe and had white hair, sat cross-legged in the void. There seemed to be the sun and the moon rotating around him. Living beings were dying, the heavens were collapsing, and the galaxy was reversing. The 18th ancestor's aura was unbelievably strong. It made one feel as if they were facing the heavens. No wonder he had the ability to kill a supreme martial artist in 3 moves. Jun Xiaoyao secretly sighed. None of the patriarchs of the Jun family were simple people. Not to mention, the Jun family seemed to have 17 people as powerful as the 18th ancestor. Seeing Jun Xiaoyao's arrival, a rare smile appeared on the 18th ancestor's old face. Very good, the 18th ancestor said. Obviously, he was praising Jun Xiaoyao's performance at the 10-years-old banquet. Defeating Yi Xingyun was one thing, but tearing apart the dragon son of Zulong with his bare hands was definitely an honor for the Jun family. Jun Xiaoyao cupped his hands slightly and said calmly, "May I know why the patriarch has asked me to come?" In the face of the 18th ancestor, even some of the clan elders would tremble and be very cautious. Jun Xiaoyao, on the other hand, remained calm and composed. This made the 18th ancestor even more satisfied. The sacred body of the ancients combined with the bones of supremacy meant that there was no doubt about his talent. However, what was even rarer was that Zhang Xiaoyao's temperament was also so calm and composed. He did not seem like a 10-year-old boy at all. "Don't you want to learn the sword chant of the immortal slayer?" the 18th ancestor asked with a faint smile. Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes lit up. The whole book. Chapter 42. Zhang Xiaoyao could never forget the immortal slaughtering sword art. The sword slashed out, reflecting the horrifying scene of the fallen immortals. Zulong, a quasi-supreme, was killed in 3 moves. Although the 18th ancestor's high cultivation was one of the reasons, it was also because the immortal slaying sword chant was too powerful. The 18th ancestor continued, "There are countless sword arts in the Huangtian mystic realm, but the ones that are truly at the top are the 5 great divine arts. The Zhang family's sword chant of the immortal slayer is one of the 5 great divine arts." 5 great divine arts. Zhang Xiaoyao muttered. Even though he already knew that the sword chant of the immortal slayer was no ordinary item, he didn't expect it to be one of the 5 godly chants. No wonder I couldn't find the immortal slayer sword art in the Zhang family's martial pavilion. Zhang Xiaoyao suddenly understood. Haha, of course. The main thing is that this sword technique is difficult to learn. Even if it is open to ordinary people, they might not even be able to learn it after spending more than 10 years. Instead, it would be a waste of time, the 18th ancestor explained. Zhang Xiaoyao agreed. Without extraordinary talent and perception, cultivating the immortal slaughtering sword art was indeed a waste of time and effort. Unfortunately, Zhang Xiaoyao just so happened to be a person with monstrous innate talent and comprehension ability. "Ancestor, this immortal slaying sword art." Zhang Xiaoyao stopped talking. "I didn't give it to you before because I was afraid that it would delay your cultivation. But now, you're about to go out and travel the world, and you really do need a trump card. While the sacred body of the ancients and the bones of supremacy are powerful, you still need to learn martial arts," the 18th ancestor warned. Next, the 18th ancestor taught Zhang Xiaoyao the immortal slaying sword chant. The immortal slaughtering sword art was divided into 3 moves. The first move, Immortal Fall, was a sword of mana that targeted the physical body. The second move, Immortal Vanquisher, was a sword of the soul that targeted the primordial spirit of the divine palace. As for the final move, it was the Immortal Slaying. It was a sword strike that combined the spirit and flesh. It was the move that the 18th ancestor had used to kill a quasi-paragon in 3 moves. If you can learn the first move of these 3 moves within 3 years, you will have a high chance of successfully mastering them, the 18th ancestor said with a faint smile. Yes. Zhang Xiaoyao nodded, but he was thinking in his heart. 3 years. I can't wait that long. The 18th ancestor looked at Zhang Xiaoyao. After a moment of hesitation, he said, "Xiaoyao, there are 2 more things I need to tell you." "Patriarch, please speak your mind," Zhang Xiaoyao said. "When you turn 18, I'll tell you the secrets behind the Zhang family and your father's affairs." Zhang Xiaoyao was shocked when he heard this. The secret behind the Zhang family? Zhang Xiaoyao was also very curious. What kind of secret story was behind such a powerful and glorious Zhang family? But the most important thing was his father, Zhang Wuhui. Zhang Xiaoyao had heard the words white-robed divine king so many times that his ears were about to grow calluses. What kind of person was his father? Why didn't he return? What exactly happened back then? It's still too early for you to know all of this. I'll tell you everything during the coming-of-age ceremony, the 18th ancestor said. Zhang Xiaoyao nodded slightly and did not ask any more questions. Now, he was indeed invincible among the young geniuses. But he still did not have the ability to know these secrets. Zhang Xiaoyao stayed by the 18th ancestor's side for the rest of the time. The 18th ancestor personally explained the sword chant of the immortal slayer to Zhang Xiaoyao. Back then, the 18th ancestor cultivated the sword chant of the immortal slayer. He was already extremely talented to have mastered it within a year. However, 3 months later, in the ancestral land of the Zhang family, Zhang Xiaoyao raised his hand, and a vast amount of golden magical power surged out. He used his fingers as a sword, and a dazzling sword aura appeared out of nowhere. It was as if there were phantoms of deities around it. The sword aura swept across as if it wanted to destroy the stars in the sky. The void trembled, and the clouds in the sky collapse. Rumble. After the sword aura swept across, a large patch of clouds was cut in half. The remaining sword aura burst out in all directions, alarming many elders and important figures of the Jun family. That's the aura of the sword chant of the immortal slayer. Could it be the 18th ancestor? No, although the sword aura's power is amazing, it's not at the level of the 18th ancestor. It's the Son of God. Many of the elders and disciples of the Jun family were dumbfounded. It had only been 3 months, right? Not only had Jun Xiaoyaro mastered it, but he could even perform the first style of the sword chant of the immortal slayer. In the ancestral land, the 18th ancestor looked at Jun Xiaoyaro and was stunned for a moment. He did not know what expression to show. It took 3 months to master the first style. This sword chant of the immortal slayer is really difficult to learn. Jun Xiaoyaro shook his head and sighed. It was not that Jun Xiaoyaro was deliberately putting on an act, but he had never spent more than 7 days training in martial arts before. In comparison, it took him 3 months to master the first style of the sword chant of the immortal slayer was indeed slow. Ahem. The 18th ancestor's face looked unnatural. Great ancestor, what's wrong? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. No, nothing. I want to lie back in the coffin and sleep for a while, the 18th ancestor said. Being with Jun Xiaoyaro had made the 18th ancestor's Taoist heart a little unstable. He needed to calm down. Thank you for the skill, great ancestor. Xiaoyaro will take his leave. Jun Xiaoyaro was also very tactful and did not disturb the 18th ancestor. After coming out of the ancestral land, Jun Xiaoyaro went straight to the Heavenly Emperor Palace. To his relief, Jiang Luoli finally left. He really had no interest in this kind of little girl. When Jun Xiaoyaro stepped into the Heavenly Emperor Palace, he found Jun Zhantian waiting for him. Have you learned the sword chant of the immortal slayer? Jun Zhantian asked. Just barely. The first style, Jun Xiaoyaro said. What a little monster, Jun Zhantian said to himself. He then said, Grandpa didn't expect you to have a piece of the bone of supremacy hidden away. Jun Xiaoyao's expression did not change, but he thought to himself that this was a bone that he got from signing in. However, after getting it, it was no different from Jun Xiaoyao's own bone. Grandpa, is there something I can help you with? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. Jun Zhantian would not have come to him for no reason. Jun Zhantian said, Xiaoyao, although you have 2 top physiques, you still need to put in double the effort to cultivate them, especially the sacred body of the ancients. When you were born, you had already awakened the first vision, the reverence of 10,000 saints. However, the sacred body of the ancients has a total of 6 visions. Jun Zhantian's words made Jun Xiaoyaro fall into deep thought. Indeed, the cultivation of the sacred body of the ancients was even more difficult than the bone of supremacy. The awakening of visions was not a simple matter. Although Jun Xiaoyao's talent was monstrous, there was still a process. Grandpa might know a place that can speed up your comprehension of the second vision of the sacred body, Jun Zhantian said. Oh! Jun Xiaoyaro raised his eyebrows. There was such a place. Have you heard of the Panwu Jin dynasty? Jun Zhantian asked. The Panwu Jin dynasty. It seems to be a top force on the level of the immortal Jin dynasty, Jun Xiaoyaro said. He had read books in his spare time, so he had a certain understanding of the major forces in the Huangtian mystic realm. That's right. The founder of the Panwu Jin dynasty was a great emperor named Panwu the Great. However, that is not important. What is important is that it is rumored that he also has the sacred body of the ancients. There is a rumor that there is a Panwu mausoleum in the depths of the palace of the Jin dynasty. It may be related to Panwu the Great. Just as Jun Zhantian finished speaking, the mechanical voice of the system sounded in Jun Xiaoyao's mind again. Ding! Congratulations to the host. New check-in location has been refreshed. Please check in at Panwu Mausoleum. Full copy. Chapter 43. Jun Xiaoyao's expression remained unchanged, but he was a little surprised. He didn't expect to see a new check-in location. However, the Panwu tomb was obviously not like the supreme treasure of Yuantian. It was a secret place that belonged to the Panwu Jin dynasty. How could they let outsiders enter? Grandpa, I don't think the Panwu Jin dynasty would let outsiders enter their secret place, would they? Jun Xiaoyaro shook his head slightly and said. Well, that's true. However, nothing is absolute. I'm just telling you that there is a way. If it doesn't work, you can force your way in for the sake of your future, Jun Zhantian said domineeringly. Let's talk about this later. Jun Xiaoyaro was speechless. It seemed that the Jun family was born to be domineering. However, Jun Xiaoyaro still wanted to solve these problems himself if possible. Great Emperor Panwu had the sacred body of the ancients. If I can get some information, it will help me avoid many detours, Jun Xiaoyaro murmured. The sacred body of the ancients was extremely rare. It was difficult to find a few in an era. The sacred body of the ancients was even rarer. Not everyone was like Jun Xiaoyaro, who had the ability to cheat and break the 10 shackles at birth. In the era of Great Emperor Panwu, cultivating the sacred body of the ancients might not be as difficult as it was now. However, it was still impossible to break through the sacred body of the ancients. Panwu tomb, huh? If I have the chance in the future, I should go and take a look, Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. After that, Jun Xiaoyaro continued to cultivate in the Heavenly Emperor Palace. He had a faint premonition that the supreme treasure of Yuantian would most likely be opened within the next few years. Therefore, before that, Jun Xiaoyaro needed to continue to improve his strength. A year passed in the blink of an eye. Jun Xiaoyaro was 11 years old. However, he looked like a teenager of 15 or 16 years old. He was tall, handsome, and had an otherworldly temperament. People who looked at him felt ashamed of their inferiority. They were afraid that their gazes would taint Jun Xiaoyao's sacredness. Within this 1 year, Jun Xiaoyao's cultivation had reached the consummate level of the Celestial Bridge realm. However, the main reason was that he had spent all of his energy on cultivating his divine abilities. He had finished cultivating the second style of the immortal slaughtering sword art. This speed would leave even the 18th ancestor speechless and in awe. After the bone of supremacy absorbed the divinity essence, it transformed into a complete grand superpower, the Hand of Heaven. This was the complete version of the Light of Tribulation. As for the dragon essence, Jun Xiaoyaro had completely digested it. The boundless dragonfolk chi and blood had allowed Jun Xiaoyaro to awaken another 20,000 granules of the mega mammoth. Now that he had awakened 70,000 granules of the giant elephant, that was a force of 700 million pounds. It was worth noting that the power of the sacred body of the ancients was not included. Jun Xiaoyaro had been using the power of the strength of the hell-crushing divine elephant all this time. As for the ability of the sacred body of the ancients itself, it was more on the level of immortality and indestructibility. Of course, if Jun Xiaoyaro were to use the power of the sacred body of the ancients, it would only be more terrifying. In addition, Jun Xiaoyaro had also obtained the Severing Dragon Hand, Dragon Fist, True Dragon Heaven Imprisonment Technique, and other martial arts divine abilities of Zulong from the stripped dragon essence. The only thing that made him feel a little regretful was that the dragon essence did not contain any true dragon divine abilities. Sigh, it's a little boring to cultivate all the time. I kind of miss Xiao Chen. Jun Xiaoyaro sighed slightly. I wonder if Xiao Chen has fattened up. Jun Xiaoyaro seemed to be able to see a lush green field of leeks. Kuan State was one of the 3,000 mystical states of the Huangtian mystic realm. This state was located in a remote area, and the environment was barren. Bandits and monsters ran rampant, and the soil was extremely harsh. This state was not occupied by any major forces, and it was obviously an abandoned land. However, it was also because this province was quite dangerous and had a dangerous environment that it had become a somewhat famous training ground. Many young disciples of orthodoxies liked to come to Kuan State to train. At this moment, in a rather dangerous mountain range in Kuan State, sky-ripping azure dragon hand. With a loud shout, a figure that looked like a half-dragon flapped its azure dragon wings. Both of its hands turned into claws and stretched out across the sky. In an instant, hundreds of azure dragon light patterns burst out, as if they had turned into sky-ripping hands, and directly tore a monster of the consolidation realm in front of it into pieces. Blood rained down, and pieces of the monster's flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The cyan dragon scales on the surface of the half-dragon figure and the wings on its back were withdrawn, revealing a handsome young man. It was none other than Xiao Chen. It had been 3 years since he was chased out of the Jun family by Jun Xiaoyaro. The boy back then had also grown into a young man. Although Xiao Chen's meridians were crippled by Jun Xiaoyaro, it was a blessing in disguise. However, it was a blessing in disguise. He, who had cultivated the art of dragon transformation in Green Heaven, was now even stronger and had reached the middle stage of the Celestial Bridge realm. After using the Green Dragon transformation, he could even kill a Consolidation realm demonic beast. Not bad. You were able to cultivate to the 4th level of the Azure Dragon transformation in just a few years. You are indeed the son of the ancient kingdom of Dragon. In the void next to Xiao Chen, the shadow of an elder wearing an azure dragon robe with dragon horns on his head appeared. It was the remnant soul of the Master Azure Dragon, the Grand Elder of the ancient kingdom of Dragon. He looked at Xiao Chen with eyes full of admiration. The Azure Dragon transformation in heaven was extremely difficult to cultivate. Even he had spent a lot of time cultivating it back then. However, Xiao Chen's speed of improvement was far faster than his back then. It could be said that if nothing unexpected happened, Xiao Chen would definitely become a famous figure in the 3000 mystical states in the future. When Xiao Chen heard that, there was no joy on his face. Instead, there was hatred and coldness. Every dog has its day. I told Jun Xiaoyaro that we would fight again in 3 years, but he took me as a joke. Now that 3 years have passed, I will let Jun Xiaoyaro know who the real joke is. Xiao Chen was in high spirits and high spirits. It was as if he could already see himself trampling Jun Xiaoyaro under his feet. There was also Bai Yue. He was going to make that bitch regret it. Just as Xiao Chen was fantasizing, there was a commotion in the distance. Xiao Chen, there is a commotion over there. Be careful, Master Azure Dragon returned to the Panlong Ring and said telepathically. Xiao Chen frowned and flew over carefully. When he looked over, he was astonished. He saw a woman in a silk dress with a white veil covering her face being chased by a group of bandits. The bandits were the demonic wolf bandits, who were somewhat famous in the Kuan state. Hee, beauty, run. No one in the Kuan state can escape from the demonic wolf bandits, the bandit leader sneered. His cultivation level was also at the consolidation realm. Damn it, I can't use my cultivation level. Otherwise, they will sense me and take me back. The veiled woman was secretly angry. She had sneaked out. If she used any martial arts that were inherited from her ancestors, her guardians would sense it. Go ahead and scream, beauty. No one will come to help you even if you scream yourself hoarse, the bandit leader said with a sinister smile. Just at this moment, a figure abruptly charged out while speaking in a cold tone. Let go of that girl. The entire book. Chapter 44. Xiao Chen used the Blue Dragon transformation. Blue dragon scales spread all over his body and a pair of blue dragon wings appeared on his back. Hundreds of blue dragon light patterns spread out along with his fist. The bandit leader of the demonic wolf bandits was reduced to a bloody pulp by the punch. Damn it! How dare you attack our boss? Where did this idiot come from? Die. What followed was a fierce battle. Xiao Chen was like a blue dragon emerging from the sea. His moves were bold and powerful, which surprised the woman with the white veil. She had seen countless young talents, successors of major sects, and geniuses. However, it was rare to see a young man as powerful as Xiao Chen. Moreover, Xiao Chen did not have the arrogance and condescension of those geniuses from top orthodoxies. This made the woman with the white veil have a better impression of Xiao Chen. Soon, Xiao Chen finished the battle. At that moment, the voice of Master Blue Dragon rang in his mind. Xiao Chen, that woman is probably not an ordinary person. She has something on her that can even hide from my detection. She is definitely a genius from some imperishable orthodoxy. If you can build a good relationship with her, it will be very helpful for you to deal with the Son of God of the Jun family in the future. Master Blue Dragon's words made Xiao Chen's heart skip a beat. He knew that he was not a despicable person who would take advantage of others. However, in order to deal with Jun Xiaoyao and wash away the humiliation from 3 years ago, he would do anything. "Miss, are you all right?" Xiao Chen stepped forward and smiled. His handsome and clean smile made the woman with the white veil feel more at ease. Xiao Chen was also looking at the masked woman. Although the woman's face was covered by a white veil, her pair of watery eyes were dazzling, and her eyelashes were long. With one look, one could tell that she was a peerless beauty. This made Xiao Chen even more determined to make a good impression on the woman. What happened next was a series of tricks. The woman hid her identity and only said that she was out to train. Xiao Chen gave a brief account of his situation as well. "So, he is the eldest prince of the ancient kingdom of Dragon," the masked woman muttered to herself. She knew that the ancient kingdom of Dragon was one of the 4 symbols ancient kingdoms. It was a first-class force. However, compared to the forces behind her, there was no comparison at all. Because the power behind her was the immortal Jin dynasty. After that, Xiao Chen and the masked woman trained together in Kuan State. Their relationship was getting closer and closer. Although the veiled woman had not done anything intimate with Xiao Chen due to the fact that he was a man and a woman, Xiao Chen was still a man. But from the way they spoke, they were already very good friends. Even Master Azure Dragon couldn't help but sigh. Xiao Chen was indeed the son of fortune and the destined protagonist. He even had such luck when it came to women. One night, Xiao Chen was roasting chicken for the masked woman beside the fire. He also knew that the masked woman's name was Wu Mingyu. "Here, Mingyu. Here you go." Xiao Chen handed Wu Mingyu a roasted drumstick that was sizzling with oil. Wu Mingyu stretched out her jade-like hand and took it. Then, she removed the white veil covering her face. In an instant, a beautiful and dreamlike face entered Xiao Chen's eyes. Her eyes were like limpid autumn waters. She looked around, her snow-white skin was beautiful, and her beauty was otherworldly. Even Xiao Chen was slightly dazed by what he saw. He had never seen such a beautiful woman in his life. "What are you looking at?" Wu Mingyue's jade-like face was slightly flushed. She tore at the drumstick with her jade-like fingers, but her heart could not stop beating. To be honest, Xiao Chen did not have an advantage in terms of background or appearance compared to the young men she had met before. But for some reason, she liked Xiao Chen's honest and simple personality. At that moment, Xiao Chen's heart also skipped a beat. Even though that bitch Bai Yue abandoned me, I met someone better than her. Could this be fate? Xiao Chen thought to himself. He was even more determined to win Wu Mingyue's heart. He deliberately sighed. His expression was unusually gloomy. "What's wrong, Xiao Chen?" Wu Mingyu noticed it and asked. "Nothing. I just thought of my unfaithful fiancé." Xiao Chen sighed deeply. It was as if he was a devoted man who had been betrayed. "So, he is also a man with a story," Wu Mingyu muttered to herself. Next, Xiao Chen began to tell the story of his life with some embellishments. He was deeply in love with Bai Yue, but Bai Yue betrayed him and threw herself into the arms of his enemy. He went to her house to ask for an explanation, but he was oppressed by his enemy. In the end, all of his meridians were destroyed. After that, he gritted his teeth and trained alone, looking for an opportunity to take revenge. It was like the story of a protagonist destined to be in a novel. "Xiao Chen, I didn't expect you to have such a past." Wu Mingyu could not help but feel sorry for Xiao Chen when she heard what he said. At the same time, she was very disgusted by the enemy who bullied others. "That enemy of yours is really disgusting. Which force does he belong to? Do you need my help?" Wu Mingyu asked. Xiao Chen was slightly delighted. Was that not the effect he wanted? Master Blue Dragon said that there might be an imperishable orthodoxy behind Wu Mingyu. If that was the case, they would definitely be able to contend with the Jun family. However, Xiao Chen did not say it directly. Instead, he said with a determined face, "No need. I will take revenge on my own. How can I rely on others?" Xiao Chen's words made Wu Mingyu admire him even more. It also made Wu Mingyu more determined to help Xiao Chen. "Xiao Chen, say no more. No matter what your enemy's background is, I am not afraid of him. If he dares to oppress me, I will definitely make him regret it. Wu Mingyue's tone revealed a rare touch of nobility and dominance. Who was she? She was the eldest princess of the imperishable Jin dynasty. Her background was shocking. She was confident that even if Xiao Chen's enemy was a genius from an imperishable orthodoxy, he would only be able to bow before her. In the Huangtian mystic realm, there were not many geniuses who had a higher status than her. Thank you very much, Mingyu. Xiao Chen showed a touch of gratitude. Wu Mingyu nodded slightly. She had made up her mind. If she had the chance to meet Xiao Chen's enemy in the future, she would not mind eliminating him directly. In the Heavenly Emperor Palace of the Jun family in the Emperor State, Jun Xiaoyaro, who was training, suddenly felt something and opened his eyes. Why do I feel like someone is trying to hurt me? Jun Xiaoyaro murmured. However, he then smiled. There were a lot of people who wanted to hurt him. The people of Zulong, Xiao Chen, Yi Xingyun, and even Jun Wanjie were all possibilities. However, Jun Xiaoyao did not care about these things. No matter what, no one could threaten him. At this moment, Jun Zhangjian's voice was heard outside the Heavenly Emperor Palace. Jun Zhangjian requests to see Lord Son of God. Come in, Jun Xiaoyao said. After a short while, Jun Zhangjian walked in with a hint of excitement on his face. Brother Zhangjian, what happened? Jun Xiaoyao asked with a smile. Son of God, there is news about the supreme treasure of Yuantian. The complete book. Chapter 45. Jun Zhangjian's face was filled with excitement. He had obtained the supreme token of Yuantian a few years ago, but he had never had a chance to use it. But now, there was finally news about the supreme treasure of Yuantian. Oh, the secret treasure is about to appear. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were calm. He was not too surprised. This was within his expectations. That's right. Jun Zhangjian nodded and said, there is news that there is a phenomenon in the Nanyuan mystical state, and there is a supreme aura spreading. If there is no accident, there is no doubt that it is the supreme treasure of Yuantian. Jun Xiaoyaro nodded slightly and said, well then, we can go after some preparation. Jun Zhangjian continued, Son of God, there should be 4 geniuses in the Jun family who have obtained the supreme token of Yuantian. 4. Jun Xiaoyaro was puzzled. Son of God, you, me, Jun Shuahuang, and Jun Zhangjian paused and hesitated. Who? Jun Xiaoyaro asked calmly. Jun Wanjie. Jun Zhangjian exhaled and said. He knew that Jun Wanjie did not seem to get along with Jun Xiaoyaro. Oh, it's him. Then it's fine, Jun Xiaoyaro said casually. He was invincible and respected among his peers. Jun Wanjie was not a threat to him. A few days later, the news of a supreme treasure appearing in the Nanyuan mystical state began to spread throughout the 3,000 mystical states. Supreme secret treasures were the treasures of an unparalleled sovereign expert. Even the immortal orthodoxes were attracted to it, let alone the second-tier forces. For a time, the 3,000 mystical states of the Huangtian mystic realm were in turmoil. It was conceivable that this would be a grand gathering of geniuses, a stage for the various forces to compete. Kuan State, outside a mountain range. Xiao Chen and Wu Mingyu appeared. Xiao Chen had already found out that the supreme treasure of Yuantian had appeared in the Nanyuan mystical state. Master Azure Dragon had also been telling him that he had to obtain the ancient dragon bones in the treasure trove. Therefore, he was also preparing to head to the Nanyuan mystical state. Mingyu, do you want to go to the Nanyuan mystical state with me? Xiao Chen looked at Wu Mingyu with tender eyes. During this period of time, he and Wu Mingyu had not had any substantial contact. However, their relationship was already very harmonious. This made Xiao Chen think that he was almost done with Wu Mingyu. Wu Mingyu's face was covered with a white veil. She looked at Xiao Chen with her bright eyes, which were filled with tenderness. However, she still shook her head slightly and said, I'm sorry, Xiao Chen. The supreme treasure of Yuantian has appeared, and many forces will gather here. If I show up, my identity will be exposed, and I will be taken back. Xiao Chen's face darkened slightly at Wu Mingyu's words. He now knew Wu Mingyu's true identity. She was the eldest princess of the Panwu Jin dynasty, and her status was extremely high. The reason why she escaped alone was because she didn't want to face the matter of choosing a prince consort. She didn't want her marriage to be mixed with personal interests and be manipulated by others. Mingyu, one day, I will go to the Panwu Jin dynasty and marry you. For some reason, Xiao Chen suddenly said in a hot-blooded manner. Wu Mingyue's cheeks blushed when she heard this. She was as beautiful as the morning glow reflected on the snow. Xiao Chen, what nonsense are you talking about? Wu Mingyu showed a rare shyness. It was said that women in love were brainless. Wu Mingyu didn't fall for Xiao Chen directly, but she already had a good impression of him. However, she also understood that although Xiao Chen was powerful, he was not a match for her. There was no way the Panwu Celestial Dynasty would allow their eldest princess to marry a prince of the ancient kingdom of Dragon. Haha, don't worry. I, Xiao Chen, am a man of my words. I will never go back on my word. Xiao Chen smiled with confidence. That confident and bright smile gave Wu Mingyu a special feeling. Xiao Chen was different from the other young talents she had met. He was determined and simple. After that, Xiao Chen said goodbye to Wu Mingyu despite his reluctance. Xiao Chen, although I can't go with you in public, I can help you in secret. If you encounter any danger in the supreme treasure of Yuan-Tian, I will help you. Wu Mingyu murmured in her mind. She had decided to hide in the dark and follow Xiao Chen. The reason why she did that was because she had a vague feeling in her heart. Xiao Chen's trip to the supreme treasure of Yuan-Tian this time would be very dangerous. In the headquarters of the Zulong, Hong State. In a mountain range that stretched for thousands of miles and was filled with dragon qi. A loud voice was heard. Bitch, back then, Supreme Yuan-Tian was arrogant and overbearing. He took several sets of priceless ancient dragon bones from the lair of Zulong. Now that the treasure is open, go and get those dragon bones back. As the voice finished speaking, another woman in blue armor suddenly showed herself. She had a beautiful face and a slender body. The blue armor wrapped around her well-proportioned body. She looked like a heroine. But the most eye-catching thing about her was the two blue dragon horns sticking out of her smooth black hair. It showed that she was not a human, but a descendant of the Archean royalty. This woman was called Long Bichi. She was a talented dragon girl in Zulong. In Zulong, dragon girls were equal in status to the sons of dragons. And Long Bichi was more powerful than Long Haotian to some extent. This was because her lineage's ancestor had once produced an ancient azure dragon emperor. The ancient emperor of the Archean royalty was a supreme being who was on par with the great emperor of the human race. Therefore, it seemed that Long Bichi also had a trace of the ancient emperor's bloodline. Although the ancient emperor's bloodline in Long Bichi's body was so thin that it was difficult to extract. But after all, she was the descendant of the ancient emperor of the Blue Dragon. Her talent was indisputable. Yes, Bichi will follow ancestors' order and bring back the ancient dragon bones. Long Bichi cupped her fists. She looked as valiant as a man. By the way, you must be careful of the son of God of the Jun family. When the hidden treasure is opened, he might join the fight. The loud voice reminded her. Is the son of God of the Jun family that powerful? Long Bichi frowned. She had heard so many stories about the son of God of the Jun family that her ears were almost sick of hearing them. He can easily kill Long Haotian. What do you think? The voice said. Long Haotian has integrated one dragon essence, so he is not weak. But Bichi has integrated two dragon essences and completely refined them. In terms of strength, Long Haotian is no match for Bichi. Long Bichi raised her snow-white chin slightly with confidence. Both of them were 1 in a million geniuses. Who would admit defeat to each other? Before seeing how powerful Jun Xiaoyara was, even Jun Zhanjian, a member of the Jun family, would underestimate him. Not to mention Long Bichi, who was an enemy of the Jun family. Most of the time, these arrogant geniuses wouldn't admit defeat before they were truly defeated. If they were afraid from the beginning, their Taoist heart would collapse, and they would not be able to continue their cultivation. Anyway, be careful. The voice warned. Yes, master. I will take my leave now. Long Bichi cupped her fists slightly. She did not take the advice seriously and left immediately. The loud voice sighed and said, "Sigh. There used to be a descendant of the first wife of the ancient emperor of the Blue Dragon clan who was sealed in the divine source. Now, she is missing. The complete spell of dragon transformation in Blue Heaven is also lost. If we can find the descendant of the first wife and let her break the seal, we will have another existence like Long Outyen in Zulong. When the time comes, the Forbidden Dragon's son and the Forbidden Dragon daughter will both appear. The son of God of the Jun family will be nothing." The Complete Book. Chapter 46. The appearance of the supreme treasure of Yuan Tian in the Nanyuan mystical state had stirred up a storm. Recently, people from top orthodoxies and first-rate forces rushed to the Nanyuan mystical state from time to time. There were all kinds of carriages, flying ancient beasts, and ships crossing the void. It was very lively. However, people from these forces also knew that the imperishable orthodoxies would eventually occupy the majority of the supreme treasure of Yuan Tian. This time, the supreme treasure of Yuan Tian would become a place for the imperishable orthodoxies to train their younger disciples. For example, someone saw an azure dragon soaring into the sky from Zulong with a valiant figure standing on it. Someone recognized that it was the famous dragon lady of the azure dragon bloodline in Zulong. She was extremely powerful. Someone also saw a golden divine chariot flying across the sky from the Ji family of the clan of the ancients. A handsome young man was sitting on it, and his right arm seemed to be shining with bright divine light. "It's Ji Xian, the young saint of the Ji family," someone exclaimed. Some members of the Archean royal family also rushed over. Someone saw a 9-headed golden lion treading across the sky, full of vigor and might. It was the most prosperous bloodline of the Archean royal family, the 9-headed lion clan. It was rumored that there were very few creatures in this clan, but they were extremely powerful. They were almost at the threshold of the Archean royalty. It would probably not take many years for the 9-headed lion clan to successfully enter the Archean royalty class. There were also the pitch-black sky-swallowing sparrows. They flapped their wings and devoured everything in their path. All in all, there were many top forces like this. People from other forces also knew that they could only pick up the leftovers. In the Jun family of the Emperor State. After some time of preparation, Jun Xiaoyaro was also ready to set off. This would be his first time entering the world. Strictly speaking, the 10-years-old banquet could only be regarded as a debut, not a complete entry into the world. This time, he was going to walk out of the Jun family and travel the mystic realm with the double halo of the Jun family's Son of God and Sequence 0. Xiaoyao, take these things. This guardian talisman was refined by the 18th ancestor, and this greater teleportation talisman can be used to shift space at critical moments. All in all, if those old farts dare to lower themselves to make a move against you, my Jun family will definitely make them suffer, Jun Zhantian said. Thank you, Grandpa. Jun Xiaoyaro nodded slightly. However, if you encounter geniuses of the same generation, you'll have to rely on yourself. After all, this is also considered an experience, Jun Zhantian said. Of course. If someone of my generation could defeat me, then there would be no need for me to represent the Jun family in the immortal realm, Jun Xiaoyaro said with a calm smile. These Son of God, holy sons, holy daughters, and others who traveled outside represented the face of their respective forces. If he lost to someone else, the faction behind him would also lose face. Xiaoyaro, with your status, there will definitely be a lot of people who want to step on you to become famous, Jun Zhantian warned. If they want to step on me to become famous, they'll have to have the luck to do so, Jun Xiaoyaro said lightly with his hands behind his back. After that, Jun Xiaoyaro and the others prepared to set off. This time, Jun Zhantian and the other elders led the team. Outside the Jun family's mountain gate, a carriage pulled by 9 white jade dragon horses had already been prepared. This kind of white jade dragon horse had an extremely rare bloodline. It had a trace of the white dragon's blood and could ride the clouds and mist, looking extraordinary. If a top genius could obtain a white jade dragon horse, it would be enough for him to show off among his peers. But now, there were 9 white jade draconic horses pulling a carriage. Obviously, this carriage was prepared for Jun Xiaoyaro. Next to the carriage stood Jun Zhanjian and Jun Shuahuang, the two sequences. There were also some young geniuses of the Jun family who had been training and had been waiting respectfully for a long time. Jun Xiaoyaro walked out calmly with Jun Linglong following beside him. "Greetings, Lord Son of God." Everyone, including Jun Shuahuang and Jun Zhanjian, saluted Jun Xiaoyaro respectfully with admiration in their eyes. Jun Xiaoyao's performance at the 10-years-old banquet was enough to convince these young people of the Jun family. They were also looking forward to seeing what kind of amazing achievements Jun Xiaoyaro could make in the supreme treasure of Yuantian. No need to be so polite. By the way, is there one person missing? Jun Xiaoyaro raised his eyebrows slightly. Jun Zhanjian said, "Son of God, it's Jun Wanjie. He has already left with his followers. Are they dissatisfied with me?" Jun Xiaoyaro murmured. He didn't care. Dissatisfied? He just needed to beat them into submission. There was nothing that couldn't be solved with his fists. If that didn't work, he would just punch them again. After that, the Jun family's mighty team also set off for the Nanyuan mystical state. At the same time, Xiao Chen was also rushing to the Nanyuan mystical state. After all, the supreme treasure of Yuantian was also very important to him. Putting aside other rare fortuitous encounters, the ancient dragon bones alone were extremely important for him to cultivate the spell of dragon transformation in Blue Heaven. Not to mention, Master Blue Dragon also needed the ancient dragon bones to reconstruct his body. Therefore, Xiao Chen was determined to succeed in this trip to the secret realm. The Nanyuan mystical state was one of the 3,000 mystical states in the Huangtian mystic realm. It was in the territory of the Daoji Heavenly Sect, a top force. The Daoji Heavenly Sect had attended Jun Xiaoyao's 10-years-old banquet before. The old Daoist of the Daoji Heavenly Sect was full of praise for Jun Xiaoyao. At the moment, in Nantian city of the Nanyuan mystical state. This city was the closest to the supreme treasure of Yuantian. Therefore, it had become very lively recently. All the major forces, the far ancient royal families, strange creatures, and even the demon clan had shown up. It could be said that the good and the bad were mixed together. At this moment, everyone noticed that a group of green-robed figures had appeared in the sky above Nantian city. Look at their clothes. They are the disciples of the Daoji Heavenly Sect. There are also many elders. Why are they all here? Is the leader the old Daoist of the Daoji Heavenly Sect? In terms of status, he is even higher than the sect master of the Daoji Heavenly Sect. Oh my God, even such people have come out to wait. Could it be that they are going to meet someone important? But what kind of important person is worthy of meeting the old Daoist of the Daoji Heavenly Sect? While many cultivators and creatures in Nantian city were in an uproar, in the distant sky, a mighty group of people arrived. There were ships, chariots, and carriages pulled by 9 white jade dragons. The rumbling sound of the carriages crushed the sky. The flag fluttered in the wind, and the word Jun was written on it. Damn, it's the Jun family of the ancient. The people of the Jun family are here. No wonder the Daoji Heavenly Sect is so cautious. Even the old Daoist has shown up. By the way, is the rumored son of God of the Jun family here? I've heard so many rumors about him that I've grown calluses in my ears. Yes. I heard that the son of God of the Jun family is so handsome that he doesn't look like a human. He looks like a banished immortal from the heavens. Many female cultivators were also looking forward to seeing him with bright eyes. The entire book. Chapter 47. This was Jun Xiaoyao's first time traveling outside. However, his name had already spread throughout the entire Huangtian mystic realm. There was almost no one who did not know about it. However, many people knew about Jun Xiaoyao, but very few had actually seen Jun Xiaoyao. Under such curiosity, Jun Xiaoyao seemed even more mysterious, making everyone look forward to seeing him. I didn't expect Elder Jun to come in person this time. Your presence brings light to our Daoji Heavenly Sect. The old Daoist of the Daoji Heavenly Sect smiled and cupped his hands. Haha, old Daoist, you're too polite. Jun Zhontian stepped out and laughed heartily. By the way, that son of God. The old Daoist glanced around. To be honest, there were very few people in the younger generation who could leave a deep impression on him. Jun Xiaoyaro was definitely the one who left the deepest impression on him. Haha, I didn't expect to be remembered by you. I'm flattered. On the carriage pulled by 9 white jade dragons, Jun Linglong lifted the bead curtain with her hand, and Jun Xiaoyaro walked out calmly. He was dressed in snow-white clothes, and his figure was slender like a bamboo in the breeze. His temperament was excellent. His skin was crystal clear like jade, and his hair was shining. His entire body was shrouded in a hazy mist of immortal light. His pitilessly handsome face was also shrouded in a mist of immortal light. This wasn't deliberately hidden by Jun Xiaoyaro. It was his natural physique and the bones of supremacy that made his entire body shrouded in Taoist rhymes and natural immortal light. Oh my God, is that the son of God of the Jun family? What kind of godlike face is this? I love it. Ah, I'm dead. The moment Jun Xiaoyaro appeared, the entire Nantian city was in an uproar. Not to mention the human female cultivators. At this moment, all the female creatures' eyes were glued to Jun Xiaoyaro like magnets meeting iron. Even some of the male cultivators were dumbfounded by the sight. God, why did you let me see the face of the son of God of the Jun family? With this, who else in my life would be able to catch my eye? A proud daughter of heaven from a first-rate orthodoxy raised her head to look. Her beautiful eyes were absent-minded, extremely distressed. The saintess from the other holy land muttered to herself as she tied up her long hair. In this life, I'll keep my long hair for you. If I don't marry you, I won't cut my hair, and I'll comb my own boudoir. Such scenes played out in every corner of Nantian City. It could be said that Jun Xiaoyao's appearance caused the female cultivators to almost freeze in place. Orgasm. Even those men could not bring themselves to be jealous, because the disparity between them was simply too great. Jun Xiaoyao's identity, status, appearance, and strength were all superior to Jun Xiaoyao. Every single one of them left them in the dust. Jun Xiaoyao glanced down indifferently. Those female cultivators reminded him of the die-hard fans who chased after celebrities in his previous life. Although Jun Xiaoyao's appearance was already shrouded in divine brilliance, even a blurry glimpse of him was soul-stirring, enough to make those female cultivators dizzy. Haha, son of God, you're too kind. This old Taoist has already prepared a place for you to stay. Everyone, please. The old Taoist cupped his hands and said. Then, under the old Taoist's lead, Jun Xiaoyao and the others left. The entire Nantian city was in an uproar. It was not hard to imagine that the appearance of the son of God of the Jun family was far more influential than the appearance of any other faction's prides. At this moment, in a house in Nantian City, a young man in silver armor was sitting cross-legged. His face was square and resolute, and there were crisscrossing scars on his cheeks, adding to his bone-chilling temperament. Around him, electric arcs were entwined, and countless lightning runes appeared in the void, exuding a powerful destructive wave. This man was naturally the fifth sequence of the Jun family, Jun Wanjie. In front of him, a follower shrouded in black mist was reporting the situation to him. They're already here? Jun Wanjie's eyes were intertwined with lightning tribulations. At the same time, there was a cold expression on his face. He had arrived at Nantian City in advance, and only some disciples of the Daoji heavenly sect had received him. But now, Jun Xiaoyao and the others had arrived, and the entire Daoji heavenly sect had been dispatched, including all the disciples and elders. Even the old Taoist, who had a higher status than the sect master, had appeared to welcome them. This kind of differential treatment was too obvious. Although there was also the intention of receiving Jun Zhantian and the other elders of the clan. But Jun Wanjie knew that the main reason was actually Jun Xiaoyao. In the eyes of the people of the Daoji heavenly sect, Jun Wanjie's importance was far less than Jun Xiaoyao's. The follower shrouded in black mist also said indignantly, "Those people of the Daoji heavenly sect are really blind. How can a fledgling be compared to Lord Wanjie?" This follower was a genius that Jun Wanjie had subdued from the outside world. His name was He Tu, and he was from the Black Cloud clan. Rumor had it that the ancestor of this clan was a black cloud that attained the supreme realm. No one is born high and mighty, not even Jun Xiaoyao. I will prove to the Jun family that he is not worthy of the position of Sequence 0, Jun Wanjie said coldly. He had gone through a lot of hardships, suffered countless injuries, and suffered countless hardships in exchange for the position of the 5th sequence. Jun Xiaoyaro had obtained the position of sequence 0 so easily. Anyone would have exploded mentally if they had been in his shoes. Jun Wanjie asked himself, and he was already very restrained. Sigh, my lord is really too aggrieved. He Tu thought to himself, feeling indignant for Jun Wanjie. A few days passed in a row, and Jun Xiaoyaro finally settled down in Nantian City. Although the supreme treasure of Yuantian had shown signs of abnormalities, it would still be a few days before it truly appeared. During these few days, Jun Zhantian also left and began to contact the people in charge of the other immortal orthodoxies. They wanted to unite and turn the entire supreme treasure of Yuantian into a training ground for the younger disciples. No experts of the older generation were allowed to enter. Jun Xiaoyaro had nothing to do, so he was very leisurely resting in his residence. Jun Linglong smiled and said, "Sir, I heard that the Nanyuan mystical state has a local specialty called the tranquil spirit tea. Linglong will go and buy it for you now." Jun Linglong was smart, attentive, and considerate. She knew that Jun Xiaoyaro liked to drink tea, so she specially inquired about this local specialty. Linglong is so attentive. Whoever marries you in the future will enjoy a good life. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled casually. Jun Linglong's pretty face blushed slightly, and she charmingly rolled her eyes at Jun Xiaoyaro. She had already made up her mind to follow Jun Xiaoyaro and be his servant for the rest of her life. How could she still marry someone else? As for asking Jun Xiaoyaro to marry her, Jun Linglong was still self-aware. It was already good enough for her to stay by Jun Xiaoyao's side as his servant. She would not take the initiative to make such an unreasonable request. Of course, if Jun Xiaoyaro was willing, Jun Linglong would gladly accept. As for the age difference of more than 10 years, it was actually negligible for cultivators. Not long after, Jun Linglong went out and arrived at a market in Nantian City. Soon, she found the tranquil spirit tea that was at least 10,000 years old. Just as Jun Linglong was about to buy it, a young figure shrouded in black mist appeared, and his tone was cold and playful. "Sorry, I want this tranquil spirit tea, the full book." Chapter 48. Jun Linglong frowned slightly and looked over with her beautiful eyes. She was the daughter of the Jun family after all. Although she wasn't as famous as Jun Xiaoyaro and the 10 sequences, she still had some reputation. There weren't many people who dared to go against her. The young figure shrouded in black fog was Jun Wanjie's follower, the genius of the Black Cloud tribe. "Hey Tu Yor, from the Black Cloud tribe?" Jun Linglong frowned. She had Linglong's heart and was knowledgeable. She recognized He Tu as a member of the Black Cloud tribe at a glance. However, she didn't know that He Tu was Jun Wanjie's follower. After all, Jun Linglong didn't pay attention to Jun Wanjie. "I want this tranquil spirit tea. Do you have a problem with that?" He Tu looked at Jun Linglong provocatively. Jun Linglong's eyes shone. She could tell that this wasn't a coincidence. This genius of the Black Cloud tribe was the one who provoked her. "Do you know who I am?" Jun Linglong said calmly, looking noble and arrogant. Only in front of Jun Xiaoyaro would she behave like an obedient servant girl. In front of everyone else, she was the daughter of the Jun family. "In any case, I am a follower of Master Thousand Calamity. How could I not know noble Lady Linglong's name?" He Tu indifferently curled his lips and smiled. "I see." Jun Linglong immediately understood after hearing what he said. No wonder this genius of the Black Cloud tribe was so fearless and even dared to provoke her. It turned out that the sequence 5, Jun Wanjie, was standing behind him. It seemed that He Tu didn't need to be afraid of her. "This tea is what Lord Son of God wants. How dare you stop him?" Jun Linglong said coldly. "Sorry, my lord also wants to drink this tea. Also, don't use Son of God as a shield. My lord is not weaker than him," He Tu said coldly. At this moment, a sword light suddenly shot towards He Tu from afar. At the same time, a cold scolding voice was heard. "Where did this blind thing come from? Let me teach you a lesson on behalf of Jun Wanjie." He Tu's expression changed when he sensed the fluctuation of the sword light. His body suddenly vaporized and turned into a cloud of black mist. The sword light pierced through the black fog and landed on the ground behind it. He too condensed again, but his face was pale. Vaporizing into mist was the innate ability of the black cloud race. However, every time it was used, it consumed a lot of magic power. Not far away, a figure holding a sword in his arms appeared. It was the 10th sequence, Jun Zhanjian. He had previously wanted to become Jun Xiaoyao's follower, but had been rejected by Jun Xiaoyao. It was indeed inappropriate for an echelon cultivator to become a follower. Although he had been rejected by Jun Xiaoyao, Jun Zhanjian was already prepared to be a follower. It was just that he did not have the title. 10th sequence, Jun Zhanjian, why are you? He Tu's face was pale, and there was fear in his eyes. If it was just Jun Linglong, he would not be afraid. Although Jun Linglong was a noble lady, she had not reached the level of one of the 10 echelon cultivators. Jun Zhanjian, on the other hand, was a genuine echelon cultivator. Although his status and strength were not as high as his master, Jun Wanjie. However, a echelon cultivator was a echelon cultivator. He could not be humiliated. He too was also full of doubts. Why did Jun Zhanjian feel like he was Jun Xiaoyao's follower? Who gave you the courage to provoke the people around the Son of God? Was it Jun Wanjie? Jun Zhanjian scolded coldly. He Tu's face turned pale. He was still a little afraid when facing Jun Zhanjian. At this moment, a voice that was as cold as ice sounded in the distance. Jun Zhanjian, you are one of the echelon cultivators, but you are willing to become Jun Xiaoyao's follower. What charm does he have that you are willing to submit to him? When he heard this voice, Jun Zhanjian's expression changed slightly. It was Jun Wanjie's voice. As expected, a figure wrapped in lightning divine radiance descended from the sky. It was Jun Wanjie. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and lightning runes appeared all over his body, making him look like a god of thunder. Is that Jun Wanjie, the 5th sequence of the Jun family? What's going on? Is there going to be a conflict? That seems to be Jun Zhanjian, the 10th sequence of the Jun family, and Linglong. The supreme treasure of Yuan Tian hasn't been opened yet, and the Jun family is going to fight among themselves. Many people were attracted to the scene. Jun Wanjie, what are you doing? Seeing Jun Wanjie's explosive aura, Jun Zhanjian frowned. Jun Wanjie's temper was famous for being tyrannical. He had even taught many members of the Jun family a lesson, let alone outsiders. I can't believe that a sequence of the Jun family has become a follower. If you really want to do this, then you should give up your identity as a sequence of the Jun family as soon as possible. After saying that, Jun Wanjie directly attacked. As he raised his hand, the divine light of thunder appeared. He cultivated the supreme technique, the heavenly method of surviving calamities, and awakened the thunder calamity battle body. Among the 3,000 physiques, it ranked in the top 300. Moreover, this thunder calamity battle body was extremely powerful and lethal, far surpassing Yi Xingyun's kingly body of stars. Rumble. Jun Wanjie pushed out his palm, and the rolling thunder seemed to turn into a torrent, crashing down on Jun Zhanjian and Jun Linglong. Oh no! Jun Zhanjian hurriedly drew his sword, and the dazzling sword light spread out. Jun Linglong made a move as well. However, even if the two of them attacked at the same time, it was still difficult to block Jun Wanjie's attack. A loud rumble was heard. Both Jun Zhanjian and Jun Linglong were shaken, and they took several steps back. Jun Zhanjian was fine. After all, he was a sequence 10. Although he was not as strong as Jun Wanjie, the gap was not too big. Jun Linglong, on the other hand, was slightly weaker. She retreated dozens of steps, and her flawless snow-white face was a little pale. There was a faint trace of blood at the corner of her lips. Jun Wanjie glanced at them and said indifferently, "Today is a warning. Tell Jun Xiaoyao to keep a low profile in the future." After saying that, Jun Wanjie turned around and left. No matter what, Jun Zhanjian and Jun Linglong were both members of the Jun family. It was enough to teach them a lesson and suppress Jun Xiaoyao's arrogance. Jun Wanjie did not intend to seriously injure them. Master's strength is indeed the best in the world. Seeing Jun Wanjie defeat Jun Zhanjian and Jun Linglong with a raise of his hand, Heitu's eyes were full of admiration. He turned to look at Jun Linglong and the corners of his mouth curled into a playful smile. Tell your master that my master is the pillar and hope of the younger generation of the Jun family. After saying that, Heitu followed Jun Wanjie and left. At this time, Jun Linglong spat out another small mouthful of blood. You're badly injured, Jun Zhanjian said with a hint of helplessness in his tone. Compared to Jun Wanjie, he was indeed inferior. It's okay. I still have to buy tea for the young master. Jun Linglong did not forget about her own matter and bought some mind-calming spirit tea for Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Zhanjian sighed slightly as he watched. Even at this time, she was still thinking about Jun Xiaoyao. However, Jun Zhanjian also knew that Jun Xiaoyao was not someone who would swallow his anger. Since Jun Wanjie had offended the people around Jun Wanjie, he would not have a good ending. The whole book. Chapter 49. Not long after, Jun Linglong and Jun Zhanjian returned to where Jun Xiaoyao was. Young master, I've bought the tranquil spirit tea. Jun Linglong's slightly pale face revealed a smile. Okay. Jun Xiaoyao had just nodded when he noticed the abnormalities of Jun Linglong and Jun Zhanjian. He frowned slightly, got up, and walked to Jun Linglong. Young master. Jun Linglong's expression froze, and she looked a little uneasy. Jun Xiaoyao raised his hand and gently wiped away the faint trace of blood at the corner of Jun Linglong's lips. Such an intimate act made Jun Linglong blush all of a sudden. What's going on? Jun Xiaoyao asked indifferently. He wasn't all that fond of Jun Linglong, after all. At least, Jun Linglong was someone by his side. Attacking Jun Linglong was a provocation to him. I'm sorry, son of God. I couldn't stop Jun Wanjie, Jun Zhanjian said apologetically. Speak clearly, Jun Xiaoyao said. Then, Jun Zhanjian told Jun Xiaoyao everything that had happened. You're already injured, and you still want to buy me tea. Are you stupid? Jun Xiaoyao shook his head slightly. If young master wants to drink, Linglong will naturally buy it. Jun Linglong felt as sweet as honey when she heard Jun Xiaoyao's words, which seemed to contain a hint of indulgence. Let's go. Jun Xiaoyao flung his sleeves and said with his hands behind his back. Where to? Jun Zhanjian asked instinctively. Of course to find Jun Wanjie, Jun Xiaoyao said with a smile. However, there was a hint of coldness in that smile. Revenge is a dish best served cold. What do you mean by the Jun family? The bigger picture is the most important thing. Revenge could not be delayed overnight. Since Jun Wanjie had taken the initiative to provoke him, Jun Xiaoyao did not need to give him any face. On the other side, at Jun Wanjie's place, Heitu revealed a look of unwillingness as he said, My lord, since you are so powerful, why don't you go and suppress Jun Xiaoyao directly? When he saw Jun Wanjie's domineering attack, Heitu's heart was filled with admiration. At the same time, he also believed that Jun Wanjie could definitely defeat Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Wanjie shook his head slightly and said, First of all, Jun Xiaoyao has the sacred body of the ancients and the bones of supremacy. He is not weak at all. If I didn't have the advantage of age and cultivation, I might not have been able to deal with him. Secondly, the supreme treasure of Yuan Tian is about to be opened. If I have an internal conflict with Jun Xiaoyao, it will affect my condition. I might even be blamed by the elders. It had to be said that Jun Wanjie had risen from the bottom of the collateral family. He was not stupid. On the contrary, he was very shrewd. Previously, he only made a move to suppress Jun Zhanjian and Jun Linglong. He wanted to slightly suppress Jun Xiaoyao's limelight. It could be said that he stopped when it was appropriate. This way, the effect would be effective. He would not be blamed by the elders, and it would not affect his participation in the fight for the secret treasure. My lord, you are indeed a strategist. I didn't think of this at all. Heitu could not help but be even more impressed. Also, I can guarantee that Jun Xiaoyao will hold back for the time being. He will at least wait until the matter of the secret treasure is over before he dares to make a move on me. Jun Wanjie's lips curled into a cold smile. However, just as he finished speaking, there was a sudden vibration outside the pavilion where he was. What's going on? Just as Jun Wanjie was in a daze, a seal fell from the sky like a falling meteor. It's the seal of the human ruler. Jun Wanjie's expression changed abruptly, and he hurriedly dodged. Heitu's face was also pale. He turned into a wisp of black smoke and rushed out. Boom! The sky and the floor shook. The pavilion where Jun Wanjie lived was directly reduced to nothingness. A huge deep pit appeared where it used to be, and thick cracks spread around it. Such a commotion could be said to have attracted the attention of countless people around. What's going on? Did someone make a move? It seems that something happened to the sequence 5 of the Jun family. Heavens, someone actually razed Jun Wanjie's residence to the ground. The entire Nantian city was in an uproar. One had to know that that was the residence of the sequence 5 of the Jun family. Not to mention razing it to the ground, even passing by on a normal day would have to be very careful. Look, that. Is that the son of God of the Jun family? A cultivator raised his head and suddenly pointed to the sky. Above the dome of the sky, 4 figures stood. Jun Linglong, Jun Shuahuang, and Jun Zhangjian stood at the back. Jun Xiaoyaro was at the forefront. One of his hands was behind his back, while the other hand was in a posture where he had just released the seal. It was obvious that he was the one who released the man-ruler seal. Jun. Xiao. Yao. A cold shout spread out along with billions of lightning bolts. With a loud bang, a figure surrounded by lightning bolts soared into the sky. It was Jun Wanjie. His gaze was fixed on Jun Xiaoyao. It was as if there were 2 pools of lightning rolling in his eyes. Lightning flashed endlessly. He did not expect Jun Xiaoyaro to be so decisive. He had just said that Jun Xiaoyaro would definitely not make a move on him before the secret treasure was over. In the next moment, he was immediately slapped in the face. Beside him, Heitu also revealed himself. His eyes were filled with fear as he looked at Jun Xiaoyao. He had only heard of Jun Xiaoyao's name before, but he had never seen him in person. This was his first time seeing him. However, he definitely had a deep impression of him. After all, their residences were reduced to nothingness by Jun Xiaoyao's attack. Jun Xiaoyao, what is the meaning of this? Jun Wanjie suppressed the anger in his heart and said coldly, "Who gave you the guts to touch the son of God's people?" Jun Xiaoyao's tone was indifferent, but it did not lose its dominance. Jun Linglong's heart was beating non-stop. Many female cultivators who were paying attention were also overwhelmed with emotions. They wanted nothing more than to replace Jun Linglong's position. I only punished them a little. I didn't really do anything to them. Is the son of God so petty? Jun Wanjie's tone was extremely cold. Yes, you're right. I am indeed petty. If that's the case, Jun Xiaoyaro nodded slightly and looked at Heitu. Heitu's heart instantly sank to the bottom of an ice cave. You're the one who started it, right? It's fine to kill a brainless follower like you. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand as soon as he finished speaking. Majestic golden dharmic powers erupted like a volcano and intertwined to form a giant golden rune hand. He grabbed with his hand, and it was as if the 5-finger mountains were descending. No, how is this possible? Heitu was so shocked that his soul almost left his body. This was his first time facing Jun Xiaoyao. Naturally, he did not know that Jun Xiaoyao's power had reached such a level. It was as if he was facing a young the Arch. Enough, stop. Jun Wanjie raised his hand as well. Divine lightning intertwined and formed a giant lightning hand, trying to stop Jun Xiaoyao. The son of God wants to kill. Can you stop me? Jun Xiaoyao shook his head and sighed. He reached out with his other hand. Dragon Chi erupted and turned into a golden dragon claw that collided with Jun Wanjie's move. It was the severing dragon hand that he had refined from Long Haotian's dragon essence. On the other side, Jun Xiaoyaro continued to suppress Heitu. Heitu gritted his teeth and used the unique technique of the Black Cloud tribe again, turning his chi into mist. The giant golden rune hand dispersed the black mist but could not kill him. Haha, what sequence 0? You can't even kill me. How are you going to compete with the Lord? Heitu's figure condensed again. His face was pale and he still had lingering fear. However, he was relieved. It seemed that Jun Xiaoyaro could not do anything to him for the time being. Are you really brainless? Jun Xiaoyaro tilted his head slightly as if he was looking at a clown. He raised his hand again and activated the divine elephant overpowering force. The pitch-black hellfire crucible pressed down from the sky like a furnace that could refine gods and devils. It erupted with endless suction force. No, what is this? He too was so scared that his soul almost left his body. He hurriedly used chi into mist again. However, all the black mist was instantly absorbed and refined by the hellfire crucible. He too's shrill scream came from within. After a while, the screams suddenly stopped. The complete book. Chapter 50. The world fell into a dead silence. Looking at He Tu, who was killed in 2 moves, all the cultivators around Nantian City secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He Tu was a sky pride of the Black Cloud tribe. Not only was he not weak, but he was also very strong. His strength was even comparable to the sky prides of some of the major sects and orthodoxies. Otherwise, he wouldn't have become Jun Wanjie's follower. Now, Jun Xiaoyaro killed a sky pride effortlessly with a flip of his hand. All of the cultivators who saw Jun Xiaoyaro in action for the first time were shocked by what they saw. The son of God of the Jun family, Sequence 0, lived up to his name, Jun Xiaoyaro. A furious roar exploded like a sudden clap of thunder. It was Jun Wanjie. He was so angry that his hair stood on end. Lightning shot out from his eyes, showing that he was extremely angry. His own follower was killed in front of him. This was a slap in the face. Moreover, it was a merciless slap. Boom. Jun Wanjie didn't say anything else. He couldn't take it anymore. He would talk about the consequences later. Right now, Jun Wanjie only wanted to suppress Jun Xiaoyao. He slapped out with one hand. Terrifying lightning poured out and turned into tens of thousands of lightning bolts. The energy waves were so powerful that it was terrifying. This was a powerful lightning-type martial art, the 8 Baron Thunder Palm. With Jun Wanjie's Thunder Calamity battle body, any sky pride of the Celestial Bridge realm would be injured or killed with a single slap. Son of God, be careful. Jun Zhanjian couldn't help but remind him. Although he knew that Jun Xiaoyaro was very strong, Jun Wanjie wasn't weak either. Previously, he and Jun Linglong couldn't block Jun Wanjie's move. However, as soon as Jun Zhanjian said that, he choked and his pupils slowly widened. Jun Xiaoyaro clenched his fist and punched out lightly. There wasn't the slightest bit of smoke or fire, but it seemed to erupt with the roar of a dragon. The shadow of a true dragon coiled around the tip of his fist and exploded with a bang. It was Zulong's supernatural power, Dragon Fist. At the same time, the 70,000 granules of the mammoth within his body, augmented by 300 million kilograms of divine power, poured out in torrents along with this punch. When the two powers overlapped, the ripples seemed to be able to push through the heavens for 100,000 miles. Rumble. Terrifying mana ripples spread out like a small nuclear bomb exploding. The entire Nantian city seemed to tremble. Under everyone's gazes, a figure flew out from the center of the collision like a kite with its string cut. Blood splattered all over the sky. It was Jun Wanjie. His figure flew backward, and the arm that he used to punch was twisted in a strange way. It was obvious that his bones were broken. His face was pale as he looked at Jun Xiaoyaro with shock that he had never felt before. There were many things that one wouldn't be able to understand if they didn't experience it personally and only watched from the sidelines. Jun Wanjie finally understood the despair that Yi Xingyun and Long Haotian felt back then. It was as if he wasn't facing a person at all. He was facing a young great emperor. Jun Xiaoyao, your strength. Jun Wanjie stopped himself from retreating, and his pupils trembled slightly. Not only him, but the entire Nantian city was stunned. Jun Zhanjian was completely dumbfounded. He knew that Jun Xiaoyaro wasn't afraid of Jun Wanjie, but he didn't expect him to be so overwhelming. Lord Son of God is truly invincible. Jun Shuahuang exclaimed. Master. Jun Linglong's beautiful eyes were filled with admiration and admiration. This was her master, invincible in this world. I don't believe it. Again, no matter what, Jun Wanjie had risen from the bottom after all. He was more determined than people like Yi Xingyun. He obviously wouldn't admit defeat just like that. Jun Wanjie's body was surrounded by lightning. His broken bones made crackling sounds, and then his arm was restored. As expected of the Thunder Calamity Combat Constitution. It's said that this kind of constitution can be tempered by the heavenly tribulation and make the body unbelievably strong. Seeing Jun Wanjie's restored arm, many cultivators' eyes flickered. The Thunder Calamity Combat Constitution was ranked in the top 300 among the 3,000 constitutions. It was extraordinary. So what if his body is strong? It was still shattered by the Son of God of the Jun family with one punch. It can only be said that compared to the sacred body of the ancients, the Thunder Calamity Combat Constitution is trash. Many female cultivators curled their lips and said disdainfully. At this moment, they had already become Jun Xiaoyao's diehard fans. How many young geniuses in the Huangtian mystic realm who were as good-looking and strong as him? At this moment, Jun Wanjie stood in the sky, surrounded by lightning. There was no longer a trace of contempt in his eyes when he looked at Jun Xiaoyao. I cultivate the supreme method and have the Thunder Calamity Combat Constitution. I will punish on behalf of the heavens and control thousands of thunder calamities. 8 Thunder's Prohibition, Desolate Thunder God. Jun Wanjie roared into the sky. Hundreds of millions of lightning bolts burst out and intertwined in the void. Black tribulation clouds rolled, as if a thunder god was manifesting. Such a scene was shocking. Punish on behalf of the heavens? Ridiculous. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was calm. Even the heavens have to bow before the Son of God, let alone you. Jun Xiaoyao's black hair fluttered in the wind. His cold words were boundlessly domineering. He activated the golden spirit sea of the sacred body of the ancients. Vigorous mana burst out and vaguely condensed into a golden divine elephant that suppressed time and space. The divine elephant overpowering force was activated to the extreme. At the same time, his left hand conjured the combatant formula. Sabers, spears, swords, halberds, axes, battle axes, hooks, and tridents. Thousands of divine weapons condensed from the void with a murderous sound that shook heaven and earth. His right hand, on the other hand, conjured a lifelike true dragon shadow with dragon chi. It was Zulong's abhina that he refined from the dragon essence, the true dragon heaven imprisonment technique. The two moves were executed together. The true dragon shadow burst into the sky and crashed into the thunder god in the black tribulation clouds. The collision of the two caused the sky to collapse and the earth to crack. Thousands of divine weapons rushed toward Jun Wanjie. How could? Jun Wanjie was hit before he could react. Even though he defended with all his might, he was still severely impacted. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood as his bones and tendons were broken. Jun Xiaoyao summoned the devil's wings and flew through the void at extreme speed. In an instant, he landed above Jun Wanjie. Augmented with divine power, his foot landed like the foot of a god king. Boom! A scalp-numbing sound was heard. His foot landed directly on Jun Wanjie's chest. The two of them fell like meteors. Accompanied by a rumbling sound. Jun Wanjie's body hit the ground heavily. Jun Xiaoyao's foot was still on Jun Wanjie's chest with one hand behind his back. His sleeves fluttered in the wind, untainted by a speck of dust. This kind of contrast was too great, giving people a kind of unreal feeling. The sequence 5 of the Jun family was currently being stepped on by Jun Xiaoyao, unable to move. Was Jun Wanjie weak? Absolutely not. Everyone saw Jun Wanjie's power just now. Then, there was only one result left. Jun Xiaoyao was too strong. Many people could see that Jun Xiaoyao hadn't used all his strength at all. He hadn't even used the supremacy bone or the sacred body. Jun Xiaoyao, let go of your foot. Jun Wanjie's face turned red as he shouted angrily, unable to remain calm. Boom! When Jun Xiaoyao heard this, he stomped heavily on Jun Wanjie again, causing blood to gush out of his mouth and his sternum to shatter. Why don't you just be a sequence 5 obediently? Why are you so blind? Jun Xiaoyao said indifferently. I haven't lost yet. As long as you give me time. Jun Wanjie's expression was ferocious as he roared indignantly. I'm not interested in a loser. Even if I give you 100,000 years, you can only look at my back in vain until you can't see me anymore. Jun Xiaoyao's words were murderous. Jun Wanjie's face turned red and blue. He spat out a mouthful of blood again. He was so angry that his Taoist heart was about to collapse. The whole book.